Two pairs of best friends. It had been nearly half a year. This reunion should have been nothing but happy. That was certainly the mood Tessa Yuan and Kevin Zhao were in, until they got out of the cab, and were immediately hit with a 1-2 combo of casual intimacy from Leo and Claire that was so natural it defied explanation. The young couple stood frozen, jaws slack, staring at each other. A stampede of 1,000 wild horses thundered through their minds. What the hell is going on? Leo and Claire, on the other hand, were all smiles. They warmly greeted their best friends, helped grab the luggage from the trunk, and paid the cab fare. Then, they announced they'd take them to the motel just outside the East Gate to drop their bags and check in. With that, they each took a suitcase and started walking side by side, their hands naturally finding each other's. Tessa and Kevin were left standing on the curb, still completely stunned, watching their backs. Kevin swallowed hard, his voice raspy. "Babe, what was that?" His brain had completely short-circuited. He had to appeal to his girlfriend for support. Tessa took a deep breath, forcing herself to remain calm. "It's nothing. Just a deskmate helping another deskmate with her scarf and jacket." Reasonable. Kevin was still dazed. Okay, maybe that's reasonable, but what about that last part? They freaking kissed. Is that reasonable, too? The image flashed back into Tessa's mind. Even for the famously unflappable literature rep of Northwood High's Class 10, it was enough to cause a seismic shock. She took another deep breath, forcing out a judgment. Maybe it's a new version of reasonable. Kevin stared at the retreating figures of Leo and Claire, muttering subconsciously, "A new version? That version's a little too advanced, don't you think? So what's our plan now?" Their grand campaign, 3 days in the making, a meticulously planned tactical assault of public affection, had been preempted. Their own target had deployed the weapon against them first. Tessa sucked in a breath, her expression hardening with resolve. For the sake of their happiness, the plan must go on. She clenched her jaw, her voice firm. "When we get to the motel, we're checking into one room for the night. We'll drown them in so much PDA, they'll be begging for mercy." One room? Kevin's daze vanished, replaced by a trembling excitement. "Yes, that's perfect. We'll outcouple them until they can't take it anymore." Internally, he was ecstatic. "Holy crap, we've been dating for half a year, and we're just one step away. I finally have a chance to share a room with my girlfriend. Who cares about Leo's happiness? It's time for his bro to find some happiness of his own." Leo and Claire walked into the motel lobby, carrying the luggage. The owner at the front desk looked up, instinctively reaching for a key card. The words rolled off his tongue with practiced ease. The usual, only one room left. Kevin and Tessa, who had just walked in behind them, froze again. Question marks popped up over their heads. What does he mean, the usual? Had they stayed here together before? Leo waved a hand at the owner. "Not for us. For them." He stepped aside, gesturing to Kevin and Tessa. The owner sized up the new arrivals. His eyes landed first on the equally beautiful and striking Tessa, then shifted to Kevin, looking him up and down. "2 rooms," he declared. "What?" Kevin rushed to the counter, his eyes wide. "Didn't you just say there was only 1 room left?" The owner's expression didn't change. "I misremembered. We just finished cleaning another one." Kevin slapped his hands on the counter. "We only want one." The owner eyed him. "A room with 2 twin beds." Kevin gritted his teeth. "A king-size bed." The owner didn't blink. "A friendship king." He pulled a room diagram out from under the counter. It showed a large bed with a physical divider installed right down the middle, forcibly separating it into 2 halves. Kevin stared, dumbfounded and indignant. "Wait a minute. Why don't they get this treatment?" The owner's tone was matter-of-fact. "They're regulars. I know them." He glanced over at Leo and Claire, a look of appreciation on his face. "See? They're a perfect match." The best man candidate's stock continued to rise. Kevin slammed his hand on the desk. "My girlfriend and I are an even better match." This time, it was the owner's turn to be surprised. He looked again at Kevin, then at Tessa standing beside him. "You two are a couple." It took some effort to convince the owner they were, in fact, dating. In the end, Kevin and Tessa secured their king-size room. While they went up to drop off their luggage, Leo and Claire waited downstairs by the entrance. Inside the elevator, Kevin was still grumbling. "What's with that guy's attitude? In what world am I not good enough for my girlfriend?" Tessa, amused and annoyed, tugged his arm. "All right, stop it. Let's talk about what's important. Did you hear what the owner said? It sounded like he knows Claire and Leo really well. Like they come here often. And maybe even share a room." The reality of it began to sink in for Kevin. What's that about? Another one of those new versions of reasonable? Tessa was starting to question her own sanity. Even if it's a new version, isn't this a bit much? Can the software really update this fast just by going to college? Kevin nodded emphatically, sighing with emotion. This Berkeley, it's really something else. After dropping their bags, Kevin and Tessa came back downstairs and rejoined Leo and Claire. It was getting close to dinner time. The plan was to head downtown for a meal and soak in the Christmas Eve atmosphere. The four of them decided to walk back towards campus, first to pick up the rest of the crew from Building 37 and their dorm, Room 205. It was also a good chance to give Kevin and Tessa a tour of Berkeley. A few minutes later, they were standing outside Building 37. Marco, Dylan, and Leon were already waiting. Soon after, Jade, Molly, and Quinn from Room 205 arrived. Once the group was assembled, Leo and Claire stood in the middle and made the introductions. Then, all 10 of them began to trek back to the main gate to catch cabs downtown. The sky had grown completely dark, and the temperature was dropping. Every breath they took turned into a visible cloud of white fog. It's reasonable now with 10 people. They split into 3 cars. Naturally, Leo and Claire took their respective best friends, the 4 of them sharing one cab. Inside the taxi, Kevin, sitting in the front passenger seat, couldn't hold it in any longer. He twisted around to face the back. Seriously, Leo, Claire, have you two upgraded to a new version of reasonable? Is everything reasonable now? Leo looked genuinely confused. What are you talking about? What new version? Kevin had been bottling this up for hours. He stared at them. Still playing dumb? You two kissed right in front of us. And that whole breathing on her hands to warm them up thing. Hell, I haven't even done that for my own girlfriend. Leo glanced at Tessa, then back at Kevin, and pointed out with righteous gravity, well, maybe that's your problem. Kevin blinked. Huh. Tessa paused. Wait, does he have a point? Her gaze toward her boyfriend suddenly turned hostile. Just then, Claire spoke up, her voice calm and clear. Besides, what's wrong with a little kiss? For a couple, a kiss is perfectly reasonable. Kevin, still not processing, shot back passionately. How is that reasonable? That's something only couples should. Wait. Tessa froze. She whipped her head around to face her best friend, her expression one of utter disbelief. Claire, what did you just say you were? A look of realization dawned on Leo's face. He slapped his forehead. All right, we forgot to tell you guys. We're dating. Claire nodded happily, her fingers naturally finding Leo's and lacing through them. She held up their joined hands for her friends to see. We're a couple now. The air in the car went completely silent. From the front seat, Kevin stared blankly at the two in the back. He slowly turned to his girlfriend, his voice a cautious whisper. Babe, is it possible we're dreaming right now? Tessa's expression was grim. She nodded slowly. There's a high probability. So what do we do? Let's test it. Tessa reached over and pinched Kevin's arm, hard. Ow, he yelped, clutching his arm. The pain was followed by a wave of pure shock. Holy crap, it's not a dream. Tessa covered her mouth, her eyes wide as she looked at Leo and Claire. You two, you're really together? If he hadn't been buckled into the passenger seat, Kevin would have vaulted into the back to give Leo a massive, celebratory hug. Even restrained by the seatbelt, he couldn't hide his excitement. He held out a hand. Leo, you're the man. You actually did it. You won over the class president. Leo, beaming, high-fived his best friend. Damn right I did. Mission accomplished. In the back, Tessa exchanged a look with her best friend. You? Won over? Claire simply raised an eyebrow, a serene expression on her face. It's better if he thinks so. Tessa understood perfectly and covered her mouth with a smile. A short while later, the taxi arrived at their destination, the Silverwood Mall in the heart of downtown. The four of them paid and got out. The other 2 cabs carrying the crews from room 520 and 205 pulled up right behind them. As the group reassembled and started walking towards the mall entrance, Kevin sidled up to Marco, Dylan, and Leon, lowering his voice. Hey, Leo and Claire are dating. How come you 3 didn't say anything? The trio from room 520 stared at him, bewildered. You mean you didn't know? Kevin rolled his eyes. How were we supposed to know? They were like this back in high school. Now, it was their turn to be shocked. Holy crap. So the rumors are true? You guys really do have all those insane customs at Northwood High. The taxi had dropped them off across the street from the mall, so they had to wait for the light to cross. When the signal changed, they started across the crosswalk. As he walked, Kevin glanced to the side and let out a small gasp of surprise. The others turned to him. What's wrong? Kevin scratched his head. I just saw a car. Looked kind of familiar, like I've seen it before. A car? Confused expressions appeared on their faces. Tessa slapped her boyfriend's arm lightly. This is a huge city, and it's your first time here. Nothing is familiar. Come on, pay attention when you're crossing the street. She took his hand and led him forward. That made sense. Kevin shook his head, dismissing the thought. It had just been a fleeting glimpse of a black sedan. He subconsciously thought it looked a lot like the one Claire used to ride in. But in a city this big, seeing the same model of car was perfectly normal. Just a coincidence. Reasonable. Putting it out of his mind, he followed his girlfriend. At that exact moment, not far behind the crosswalk, waiting in traffic, was a familiar black Maybach. The Maybach also saw the familiar figures on the crosswalk. The Maybach also thought it was quite a coincidence. But the Maybach couldn't talk, so the Maybach said nothing. The Maybach. Inside the car, the former Special Forces soldier sat behind the wheel, his expression stoic, his hands gripping the steering wheel with perfect discipline. In the back seat, a middle-aged man leaned back with his eyes closed, resting. Today, Chairman Sterling was heading home after work. His phone buzzed. Charles Sterling's eyes snapped open with a hint of excitement. He grabbed the phone and looked at the screen, only to see it was just a spam text. He let out a cold huff. The junk messages were getting more and more frequent these days. He turned his head and looked out the window at the traffic and the festive, brightly lit storefronts. It's Christmas Eve, he realized, sighing. Claire's been here for so long, and I still haven't heard a peep from her. She must still be mad at her old man. In the driver's seat, mister. Joe's heart went out to his boss. He was just about to offer a word of comfort when Charles suddenly frowned and muttered, or maybe she started dating someone, and she's hiding it from me. The ex-Special Forces soldier's body went rigid. The comforting words he was about to say were instantly swallowed. But after voicing the suspicion, Charles Sterling shook his head and laughed. Impossible. He looked at his trusted subordinate in the front seat. If that were the case, you would have known. You were with her just a little while ago. A close call, the group of 10 crossed the street and stormed into the Silverwood Mall. 3 couples, 4 single dogs. The couples naturally walked at the front. Leo and Claire, the newest couple, moved with the ease of old pros, their hands intertwined without a hint of shyness or hesitation, as if they had been doing it since their junior year of high school. Watching them, Leon and Molly couldn't help but feel a pang of envy. They're so in love, Molly sighed dreamily, her mind filled with scenes from the countless romance novels she'd read. It's so sweet. Then she had a realization. Wait a minute, I'm in a relationship too. The adorable girl looked up at her boyfriend and eagerly held out her hand. We should hold hands too. Leon was overjoyed. He carefully took her hand, afraid of squeezing too hard. He didn't forget to pull a date cake from his pocket and offer it to her with an honest, simple gesture. Hungry? Have a snack. Molly happily took it and popped it in her mouth, her eyes curving into crescent moons. So sweet. Further back, Kevin and Tessa watched the 2 couples ahead of them. Something's not right, Kevin muttered. Babe, aren't we the veteran couple here? How'd they get the jump on us with the PDA? Tessa immediately agreed. You're right. We can't lose. The 2 exchanged a look, the flames of competition burning in their eyes. She hooked her arm through his, and they marched forward, chests puffed out, to catch up. Bringing up the rear, the 4 single people watched the 3 couples ahead, feeling as though they'd just taken 1,000,000 points of emotional damage. Marco was green with envy. He turned to the tall, striking Quinn Loon next to him and sidled over with a sycophantic smile. Hey, Quinn, how about we hold hands too? Quinn rolled her eyes. You can hold your own hand. Next to them, Jade Jiang turned to Dylan. She adjusted the black-framed glasses on her nose. Do you want to hold hands? Beneath the frames, the studious girl's eyes seemed to flash with a brilliant, calculating light. Dylan shuddered and immediately shook his head, so fast it became a blur. Anyone else would have been fine. But with this particular girl, he always felt like she was sizing him up for dissection. Chairman Sterling and his trusted subordinate also entered the first-floor lobby of Silverwood Mall. He scanned the environment, noting the bustling crowds of shoppers. Business is good, Charles Sterling remarked with a nod. His company's leadership was currently planning a new strategic direction, which included acquiring a number of malls in the older part of the city. Silverwood was on the list of potential targets. Mr. Joe stood by his side, silent. When he was out with his boss, his only job was to be a bodyguard. He couldn't possibly keep up with a man's strategic business thinking. It was one of the things he respected most about his employer. When it came to business strategy and tactical vision, the man was a master, capable of seeing through to the truth of any situation. Except, of course, when it came to his own daughter. On that subject, his judgment was catastrophically awful. Thinking of his young mistress, and the precarious position he was now in, caught between father and daughter, the ex-Special Forces soldier lowered his head, his eyes twitching slightly. Charles finished his brief survey and smiled. It's my day off. I shouldn't be thinking about this. He turned to his subordinate. Let's go. Find a place to eat. With that, Chairman Sterling started walking toward the escalators. Mr. Joe acknowledged and quickly followed, his mood lightening. He would put his worries aside for now. At least tonight, on Christmas Eve, he could have a peaceful evening. Or so the veteran soldier hopefully thought. The two of them rode the escalator up to the second floor. Charles looked around. This level was mostly clothing stores. The restaurants must be on a higher floor. What's he going up? He started looking for the next escalator. Mr. Joe helped him search. He spotted one across the way and was about to tell his boss. Just then, he saw a group of college-age kids emerging from a clothing store near that very escalator. The girls at the front were chatting as they walked. The new season's collection is pretty nice. A little expensive, though. Let's come back and look after dinner. The girls were all remarkably attractive, easily standing out in a crowd. But the one on the left was on another level, stunningly beautiful, with a cool, untouchable aura. The moment he saw her face, Mr. Joe froze. A second later, he saw a familiar young man walk up beside her, and he watched as the girl naturally and gracefully reached out her hand, allowing the young man to take it. Their posture was intimate and completely natural. They were unmistakably, In that instant, as he recognized the young couple, the ex-Special Forces soldier's pupils contracted violently. His heart rate shot up to an unprecedented 360 beats per minute. He nearly had a heart attack. And, to make matters infinitely worse, at that precise moment, Charles Sterling was turning his head to look toward that very same escalator. It was a life-or-death situation. The legendary platoon leader, winner of 37 out of 43 Army-wide combat competitions, showed his true mettle. Mr. Joe lunged forward. He grabbed his boss's arms with both hands and, with a powerful twist, yanked him back around to face him, forcibly breaking the line of sight that was about to connect with the group of students. It all happened in a flash. It was a dangerously close call. The group of young people was already on the escalator, laughing and talking as they ascended to the third floor. Mr. Joe let out a long, silent sigh of relief, mentally wiping sweat from his brow. Then he looked up and saw his boss staring at him, completely bewildered. Chairman Sterling. Suddenly being grabbed so intimately by his own subordinate had short-circuited his brain. Joe, what are you doing? Mr. Joe snapped back to reality, realizing he was still gripping his boss's arms tightly. His heart seized up all over again. A fateful encounter, their last conversation in front of the convenience store, had been so pleasant. When they parted ways, they had tacitly agreed not to exchange names or numbers. But neither the old man nor the young one expected to run into each other again just a few days later, on Christmas Eve, right outside a bathroom in the Silverwood Mall. Both were pleasantly surprised. Leo walked over, a happy tone in his voice. Big brother, what are you doing here? Charles Sterling smiled, all traces of his corporate severity gone. He waved a casual hand, just passing by after work. Got hungry, so I came to grab a bite. He paused, looking at where he was standing next to the restroom sign. That sounded a bit weird. He cleared his throat and added, My employee is in the bathroom. I'm just waiting for him. Leo nodded in understanding. He could tell from the man's presence and demeanor that he held a high position. Eating with your employees? Huh? You're a pretty down-to-earth guy. Charles waved it off with a smile. It's a small company, nothing so formal. Besides, the kid's been with me for years. He's like family. I think of him as a younger brother. He glanced toward the men's room again. That kid, he's a Special Forces veteran, but he's been in there with an upset stomach for ages. His constitution is pretty weak. Leo was surprised. That's funny, I know a veteran too. He looks tough as nails, but he's always getting sick. Is that so? What a coincidence, Charles said, shaking his head with a sigh. But this kid has had it rough following me all these years. It hasn't been easy for him. He thought about their trip up through the mall. On every floor, Joe had thanked him, his sincerity so profound he was practically sweating. It had genuinely moved him. I haven't spoiled the kid for nothing. After washing his hands, Leo came back and chatted with Charles for a few more minutes. Are you here for dinner too? Charles asked. Leo nodded with a smile. Yeah, it's Christmas Eve. I'm here with some classmates. And my girlfriend. Charles's interest was immediately piqued. So how's it going? Her family still hasn't found out about you, right? Nope, not yet. Good, Charles said with a satisfied look. Listen to your big brother. Lock it down with your girlfriend first, but don't be in a rush to meet the parents. Leo thought about the prospect of meeting his girlfriend's famously formidable father and felt a pang of anxiety. He nodded vigorously. Definitely. Then, an idea struck him. He looked at Charles. My girlfriend and our friends are at the hot pot place upstairs. Why don't you join us? It seemed like a kind invitation, but internally a miniature version of Leo was rubbing its hands together gleefully. What's the point of having a girlfriend if you can't show her off? Last time, this guy didn't seem convinced when I told him how beautiful she was. Now, I'll let him see for himself. He's about to witness a real-life angel. Charles was tempted, but he thought for a moment and waved his hand with a smile. Better not. I'm still waiting for someone. I'll just grab a quick bite somewhere else. I don't want to impose on you kids. He changed the subject, looking around at the bustling mall. So, what do you think of this place? Sterling Holdings was currently in heated debate over the acquisition of several old malls. As the CEO, Charles was here not just for dinner, but to do some first-hand reconnaissance. This young man next to him had struck him as quite perceptive during their last chat. He was curious to hear his take. It was just an impulsive, casual question. But Leo thought for a moment, and his answer was surprisingly sharp. It's busy, but the experience is just okay. The overall layout and store placement in Silverwood are outdated and inefficient. The stores they brought in aren't very accessible. They're expensive but not big-name brands, so they lack real drawing power. Even the management and public facilities are subpar. I just came from upstairs, and the pipes in the restroom are broken. The only thing it has going for it is its location. But the city is planning a new subway line for the old district soon. If Silverwood loses its location advantage, this place will go under fast. Leo wasn't just guessing. As a reborn person, he remembered this mall from his past life. Business was decent in 07 and 08. But a few years later, after the subway line was rerouted, the place became a ghost town. So for him, this was less a prediction and more just reading the answer key. Charles was stunned. The way he looked at Leo changed once again. This kid, his points are well-reasoned, and many of his ideas align with my own. How can someone so young be so observant and have such a sharp, insightful perspective? Leo looked back at him, curious. Big brother, why do you ask? Charles snapped out of it, not wanting to reveal his identity. He made something up. Oh, nothing. I saw in the paper that Sterling Holdings is thinking about acquiring this mall. So, I was just asking. Sterling Holdings? Leo froze. Wasn't that his girlfriend's dad's company? His future father-in-law. He racked his brain and confirmed that in his past life, Sterling Holdings had not acquired Silverwood Mall. He couldn't help but feel a surge of admiration. My future father-in-law has excellent judgment. He shook his head. Sterling Holdings won't acquire this place. Now, it was Charles's turn to be stunned. How can you be so sure? Heck, I'm still on the fence about it myself. He couldn't resist adding, but I heard the internal meetings at Sterling are leaning toward acquisition. Leo just kept shaking his head, his tone firm. It's a rumor. It's definitely not happening. A question mark appeared over Charles's head. Wait a minute. Are you the CEO of Sterling Holdings? Or am I? Is your intel better than mine? Seeing the incredulous look on the older man's face, the miniature Leo in his mind scoffed. Are you the one who's been reborn, or am I? Of course I know better than you. Out loud. However, he offered a simple explanation. Even if the board is deadlocked, a man with the vision of Charles Sterling, the head of the company, would never fall for such a bad deal. Hot Pot and Revelations Leo took the escalator back up to the 6th floor. He entered the Hot Pot restaurant, asked a waiter for directions, and was quickly led to their table. It was a large round table, packed to the brim. The seat to Claire's right had been kept empty for him. Leo walked over and sat down. Claire looked up, her eyes questioning. What took you so long? His text had just said he'd be right back, with no details. I ran into that guy from the convenience store near the karaoke lounge, Leo explained briefly. The one I told you about. We chatted for a bit. As he was speaking, Kevin, looking like he'd just stumbled upon the scoop of the century, gave Claire a sly grin. Claire, my man Leo was only gone for a few minutes, and you already missed him? I didn't know you'd get so clingy in a relationship. The others at the table joined in, all in good fun. They wanted to see the famously cool and composed campus queen of Berkeley get flustered and blush. But the campus queen was not so easily rattled. Claire's expression remained perfectly serene. She simply nodded. I did. Kevin blinked, not comprehending. Huh. She raised an eyebrow. Is it not reasonable for someone in a relationship to be a little clingy? Then she turned to Leo, a slight curve to her lips, her voice suddenly gentle. Next time you're going to be that long, let me know. Otherwise, I'll miss you. Being on the receiving end of such a public declaration nearly made Leo blush. He just nodded awkwardly. Okay. The rest of the table, who had been laughing and hooting a moment ago, fell silent, their smiles freezing on their faces. They had just been joking around. Why were these two being so serious? Marco, who had been the most enthusiastic heckler, slumped in his seat. I'm done. Let's just order. Kevin's mouth twitched. He turned to Tessa, his feelings complicated. Babe, I think we were happier when they weren't dating. Soon after they ordered, The hot pot arrived, followed by platters of sliced beef and lamb, and various vegetables and mushrooms. As the broth came to a rolling boil, everyone eagerly started adding ingredients, and the feast began. The guys also ordered a case of beer. Kevin, thrilled to be reunited with his best friend, rubbed his hands together. Waiter, another bottle of. He was cut off by a sharp rap on the head from Tessa. Absolutely not. Every time you drink that stuff, you pass out. No hard liquor. Marco and Dylan watched with schadenfreude. There were some benefits to being single, like not having a girlfriend to police your drinking. The next second, they watched Tessa pull Kevin's head toward her, gently rubbing the spot she'd just hit. Does it hurt? The two single guys' smiles froze again. Damn it, couples should be illegal. As they ate and drank, the heat from the hot pot warmed them up, and everyone started shedding their jackets. Claire took off her coat, rolled up the sleeves of her blouse, and reached back to tie her long hair into a practical ponytail. As she did, a red string tied around her wrist caught everyone's eye. Quinn's curiosity was piqued. Is that a good luck charm, Claire? Marco's eyes lit up. Wait a second, doesn't Leo have one of those too? Leo nodded generously, rolling up his own sleeve to reveal a matching red string. It's not a good luck charm, he corrected. It's a thread of destiny. Claire nodded calmly, adding, a lover's thread. We got them at the chapel. Everyone. They were just happily eating hot pot, and suddenly they were being force-fed another dose of PDA. The topic having been raised, Tessa couldn't help but ask her best friend, so, how did you two actually get together? This question immediately grabbed everyone's attention. It was the great mystery. What powerful force had finally managed to shatter the impenetrable fortress of reasonable and allow these two to finally define their relationship? A barrage of questions followed. How did it happen? Where was the confession? When exactly did it go down? Leo scratched his head. It was a little while ago, at the old chapel on Serenity Peak. I confessed to her. Everyone was baffled. At a chapel? Is that even appropriate? Wouldn't the saints find that a bit presumptuous? To this, Claire, sitting beside him, replied with serene confidence. No, they were quite happy about it. Marco suddenly remembered something. So that's why you two took a few days off a couple weeks ago. You went off to confess your love. Molly nodded vigorously. Right. Claire was gone for a few days, too. You both disappeared after you went downtown that day. Jade frowned. But you didn't need to take that many days off, did you? Now that some time had passed, Leo didn't see the need to hide it anymore. He told them the truth, that they had run into a mugger and had to spend a few days recovering in the hospital. He summarized it briefly, but the story left everyone at the table in stunned silence, punctuated by a series of shocked gasps. Marco looked at Leo, his voice full of awe and sympathy. Dude, you really went through it. You get stabbed right before you confess. Bertha announces your relationship after you take down a criminal gang at a KTV. If you two ever get married, what kind of world-ending catastrophe is going to happen? He was immediately cut off by several sharp glares from the girls. Sure, don't jinx it. But Leo was starting to see a pattern. You know, it is a little weird. Molly, an avid reader of romance novels, nodded fiercely, her voice filled with righteous indignation. They don't even write plots like that in books. If an author tried to write a story like that, the readers would mail them enough razor blades to fill a house. After dinner, the group left the restaurant. On their way out, they passed a claw machine arcade. The girls' interest was piqued, and the guys eagerly stepped up, ready to show off their skills. Marco and Kevin, self-proclaimed masters of the claw, came up empty-handed. Leon, however, managed to win a doll and presented it to Molly like a trophy, who was overjoyed. Jade also won too. It seemed her academic prowess inexplicably extended to arcade games. She held up her two prizes and looked at Dylan. Bertha and Hammer Christmas Eve ended on a peaceful and happy note. The group went home, content. For Leo and Claire, they had even exchanged gifts, each now in possession of stuffed doll. It had been a perfect day. On the way back to campus, sitting in the back of a taxi, Claire hugged the ugly, cute charcoal-colored doll, admiring it from every angle. She couldn't seem to put it down. The first official gift little Leo gave me. The thought made the corners of her mouth curl up, so high they nearly touched the sky. Leo, sitting beside her, was confused. What are you smiling about? Her expression instantly returned to its usual placid calm. Nothing. She looked down at the doll, then back at Leo, a small smile playing on her lips. It kind of looks like you. Leo stared at the doll, whose face looked like it had survived an explosion. What? How? Before he could protest, she cut him off, making a solemn declaration. From now on, his name is Leo Hammer Wallace. Leo pouted and held up the pink bear doll he was holding. Fine. Then her name is Bertha Sue. It was meant as a counterattack, but to his surprise, Claire accepted it with pleasure. She took the little charcoal hammer and brought it over to the pink Bertha, gently tapping their faces together. Then she looked at Leo, a smirk on her face. Bertha Sue just kissed Leo Hammer. Leo? Question mark. His face flushed red. Damn it. How could she even use that to flirt? From the front passenger seat, Kevin's voice dripped with resentment. Could you two-tone it down with the PDA? There are other people in the car, you know. Next to him in the back, Tessa let out a long sigh. A best friend's life is alive too. Thankfully, they stopped their playful teasing. After a moment, Claire looked at Leo. Who did you say you ran into earlier? Leo snapped out his daze. Oh, that guy I met at the convenience store the night we went to the KTV. The one who was giving me advice. He was really nice, kept bragging about how pretty his daughter is. Claire's eyes narrowed slightly. Daughter? Pretty? She suddenly sensed a new threat to her territory. What old fossil is trying to set my little boyfriend up with someone else? She looked at him, raising an eyebrow. Is his daughter prettier than me? It was a trap so obvious that he didn't need a warning from Kevin or Tessa. Leo's response was instantaneous and righteous. Of course not. It's you, obviously. Claire nodded, satisfied. But in her mind, a certain old man had just been added to her blacklist. She would remember this. She'd have Mr. Joe look into it later and deal with it. The black Maybach cruised through the city. In the back seat, Chairman Sterling suddenly sneezed. Huh. He smiled. That must be Claire, thinking of me. In the driver's seat, the veteran soldier also sneezed. Chairman Sterling looked at him, puzzled. You too? Don't tell me my daughter is thinking of you two. Sensing the weight of his boss's gaze, Mr. Joe quickly explained, It's nothing. I think I'm just catching a cold. Charles nodded in understanding, but then his brow furrowed. Your constitution has been really weak lately. You're not that old. You spent 40 minutes in the bathroom with an upset stomach. You need to take better care of yourself. Mr. Joe. Yes, sir. The veteran soldier sighed internally. This family would fall apart without me. Chairman Sterling picked up his phone and scrolled through his contacts. I can't believe the coincidence, he mused. Running into that young man again. We seem to have a real connection. In the front seat, the Special Forces soldier heard him, but paid it no mind. His mission for the night had been a success. As long as his boss hadn't seen Leo, he didn't care who else he ran into. With that comforting thought, Mr. Joe steered the Maybach into the night. The taxi arrived at the Berkeley campus gate. Everyone got out, said their goodbyes, and made plans to hang out again the next night for Christmas Day. The girls from room 205 went back to their dorm. After washing up, they climbed into their beds. Claire, on the top bunk, sorted through a pile of stuffed dolls and offered them to her roommates. Do you guys want any of these? If not, I'm getting rid of them. The three girls happily accepted the dolls, but were confused. You never used to be able to sleep without all your dolls, Quinn said. Why the sudden generosity? Molly and Jade looked at her curiously as well. Facing their questioning gazes, Claire's expression was calm. She held up the charcoal-colored hammer doll for them to see. I only need this one now. The others just take up space. The three roommates were speechless. Quinn slapped herself lightly on the cheek. I should have just kept my mouth shut. Jade looked at her and sighed. Good question. Next time, don't ask. Molly looked at the ugly, cute doll in Claire's hand, then down at the one in her own arms, the one Leon had won for her. A huge smile spread across her face. It's okay. I have one too. The next day, December 25th, Christmas Day. The students of room 205 and room 520 went to their classes as usual, but their minds were elsewhere. As soon as classes ended, they quickly assembled, picked up Kevin and Tessa, and descended upon Summit Grill, just outside the East Gate, for another celebratory meal. Compared to the day before, everyone was much more familiar with each other now. Tessa, with her warm and generous personality, quickly hit it off with the girls from room 205. They huddled together, chatting and laughing. Kevin, meanwhile, had started a drinking competition with Marco and the others. Friendships between guys were often forged over a few rounds of drinks. But in the middle of it, an argument broke out. Leo and I are best friends, Kevin declared. Our bond is way stronger than yours. Marco and the others bristled. No way. We're closer to Leo. He's our honorary dad. Kevin laughed haughtily. Bullshit. I've known our dad for years. The argument grew heated, pulling Leo into the fray. Soon, they were all downing drinks, shouting that only the winner had the right to call him dad. Leo, caught in the middle and slightly dizzy, was bewildered. But then he thought about it and just shrugged. A duet for the ages a few months ago, at the Humanities Department's freshman welcome gala. A girl in a pink baseball cap had walked through the crowd, holding a bouquet of flowers, causing a sensation throughout the auditorium. The duet she and a certain young man had performed that night had left the audience utterly captivated. The memory was still fresh in everyone's minds. "You have to help me out just this one time," Cheryl Chun pleaded over the phone, her voice full of desperation. "The success of this whole gala is riding on you, too." Over the past semester, Leo had gotten to know Cheryl well. She had looked out for him, and he had a lot of respect for the forthright and capable senior. Her begging was hard to resist. "All right, I'll ask her," he finally relented. He hung up and immediately called his girlfriend. He explained the situation, making sure to add, "It's totally up to you. Don't feel pressured. If you don't want to do it, just say so." To his surprise, her cool, pleasant voice came through the phone, crisp and decisive. "Okay, no problem." Leo was taken aback. Huh, she agreed that easily? He thought her reserved personality would make her reluctant to perform in front of such a large crowd again. The last time, she had been bringing him flowers, a perfectly reasonable thing for a deskmate to do. And if a deskmate was already on stage, it was only reasonable to sing a song, right? Meanwhile, in room 205, Claire hung up the phone. A slight arch formed in her eyebrow. Perfect. A song was the ideal way to make a formal declaration of sovereignty. A chance to deliver a clear warning to all the other potential rivals in the humanities department who might have their eyes on her clueless little boyfriend. A dangerous glint flashed in her eyes. On the top bunk next to her, Molly, who had been dozing, suddenly shivered and woke up. She rubbed her eyes and looked around, confused. Did someone open a window? Why is it suddenly so cold in here? December 29th, 7:00 p.m. The Grand Auditorium. Every seat was filled, the air buzzing with excited chatter. The Humanities Department's New Year's Gala began to thunderous applause. As the acts went on, the audience clapped and cheered, but a palpable sense of anticipation grew. Word had gotten out. The grand finale of tonight's gala would be a special performance. The couple from the Freshman Welcome Gala was returning to the stage. As the program neared its end, the handsome male host walked out to announce the penultimate act. "And now, please enjoy a romantic duet. The song is You Are the Music in Me. Please welcome Leo Wallace and Claire Sterling." The moment her name was spoken, the audience erupted. This is it, the main event. Just as the excitement reached a fever pitch, a lone male voice from somewhere in the crowd roared, "Fuck Northwood High." The auditorium fell silent for a beat. Then a tidal wave of voices roared back in unison. "Fuck Northwood High." The chant was deafening, rising and falling in waves. In one corner of the audience, Kevin and Tessa, who had come to watch their friends perform, were completely bewildered. "Huh, did we just hear a familiar name?" "Hey," Kevin shouted, offended. "Why are you all dissing Northwood High? What did Northwood ever do to you?" He felt a duty to defend his alma mater. In the next second, dozens of cold, hard stares shot toward him. What's this guy's problem? Is he a Northwood fan? The atmosphere turned hostile. Tessa, sensing the danger, quickly tugged on her boyfriend's sleeve and whispered, "Are you trying to get us killed? If you want to live, just chant with them." Kevin looked around at the menacing glares and shuddered. His heart pounding, he hesitantly joined in. Fuck, Northwood High." The surrounding students nodded in satisfaction, their expressions softening. They turned back to the stage and continued their roaring chant. Amid the deafening noise, Kevin chanted along, his heart bleeding. "The enemy is too strong. I have brought shame upon my school." As the chanting subsided, the gentle, melodic intro of the song began to play. The male voice came first. "Na na na na, na 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 na, yeah, you're the music in me." Leo, dressed in casual jeans and a white t-shirt, walked out onto the stage, microphone in hand, looking relaxed and handsome. Then a familiar, beautiful female voice joined in. "When I hear my favorite song, I know that we belong." Claire emerged from the other side of the stage, a spotlight following her. She wore a simple white dress that accentuated her cool, radiant beauty. Her mere presence stunned the entire auditorium into silence. A gentle smile graced her lips as her eyes met his. They came together for the chorus, their voices blending in perfect harmony. "You are the music in me. It's living in all of us, and it's brought us here because you are the music in me." The girl's smile was bright. All traces of her usual coolness melted away. The boy, ever the gentleman, reached out and took her hand. She raised an eyebrow, a playful glint in her eye, and subtly tightened her grip, lacing her fingers through his in front of everyone. Under the spotlights, they shone so brightly it was almost hard to look at them, yet impossible to look away. In the audience, Tessa watched, her heart filled with warmth. Those two, they really were always meant to be. When the song ended, they bowed, still holding hands. The auditorium exploded with applause, so loud it felt like it would shake the roof off its foundation. The students were ecstatic. That was amazing. So sweet. The beach house, it was the end of December, and the winter in the city felt particularly cold this year. Leo and his friends had excitedly driven out to a rented beach house on the coast. As soon as they arrived, the guys dropped their bags and eagerly ran out to check on the beach. 10 minutes later, they came stumbling back, beaten into submission by the biting sea wind. Marco's nose was running, and his lips were trembling. Holy, sea crap, it's sea cold. Kevin shivered and nodded. Dee, definitely. The girls, who had stayed inside to unpack, burst out laughing at the sight of them. Even Claire couldn't help but smile. But then she walked over to Leo and handed him a thermos. Here, warm up. Leo took it, shivering as he sat down on the sofa. Thanks. Tessa, with a huff of annoyance that couldn't hide her concern, handed Kevin a portable hand warmer. You idiot. Hold this before you catch a cold. Molly, a bit slower on the uptake, saw what the other two were doing and realized her hands were empty. Wait a minute, she said to Leon, then dashed into the bathroom. A moment later, she returned with a hot water bottle and proudly presented it to him. Here, you get one too. Leon was touched, accepting it with a blissful expression. That left Marco and Dylan staring blankly at the scene. Just moments ago, they were all comrades in suffering. Now, their three brothers were basking in the warmth and care of their girlfriends, Marco and Dylan. Suddenly, it felt even colder. The villa's living room had a soaring 20-foot ceiling. The fireplace wasn't lit yet, and though the heat was on, it would take a while to warm up the large space. Claire pulled a down jacket from her suitcase, walked back to the sofa, and draped it over Leo's shoulders. She looked at his pathetic state, wrapped in her pink jacket, clutching a thermos and shivering, and didn't know whether to laugh or scold him. You're a grown man, acting like a little kid. Didn't you know it would be cold outside? She said, her tone a mix of exasperation and affection. Rest for a bit. We're going to start making lunch. They had arrived in the morning, and it was already approaching noon. Before coming, they had stopped at a supermarket and bought a ton of groceries and snacks. The plan was to cook their own meals at the villa for a cozier, more intimate vibe. The girls took the groceries into the kitchen and started washing vegetables and cutting meat. It seemed Tessa had taken on the role of head chef, confidently directing the others. The guys, meanwhile, stayed on the sofa to recover. They needed to thaw out first. As they rested, they started chatting. Hey, Kevin, Marco said, your girlfriend knows how to cook? Dylan looked on with envy. She's beautiful and skilled in the kitchen. You really hit the jackpot. With only guys in the living room, Dylan's vow of silence had been temporarily lifted. Kevin glanced nervously toward the kitchen to make sure Tessa couldn't hear, then lowered his voice. She knows 2 dishes, scrambled eggs with tomatoes and scrambled tomatoes with eggs. Every one. Leon was confused. Isn't that the same dish? Kevin laughed nervously. Oh, right. Then she only knows 1 dish. A look of alarm crossed Marco's face. Wait a minute. Kevin's girlfriend only knows 1 dish. If I remember correctly, Quinn and Molly can't cook. And Jade, the academic powerhouse, took an anatomy class in high school, so her knife skills are decent, but her cooking is purely theoretical. He paused, looking around at his unfortunate brothers. His voice grew grave. So, what exactly are we going to eat for lunch? The atmosphere suddenly grew heavy. The guys exchanged uneasy glances, a sense of foreboding creeping in. Then, Kevin's eyes lit up. He turned to Leo. We still have Claire. Leo, how are her cooking skills? The trio from room 520 looked at Leo with hopeful expressions. Bertha was a perfect goddess in every other way. Looks, temperament, grades. Surely, a simple thing like cooking would be no challenge for her. But Leo's brow furrowed. Bertha's cooking? He honestly had no idea. His only memories were of her expertly chopping firewood while they were camping on Mount Jade, and her knife skills demonstration at the Sweet Return Bakery, which had ended with her cutting her own finger. A shiver went down his spine. An alarm bell started ringing in his head. Then he remembered something. His expression brightened. I've got it. I'll ask someone. After the incident at the Dynasty Lounge, Mr. Joe had discreetly given him his number, telling him to call any time if he was in trouble. While this certainly felt like a dangerous moment, he pulled out his phone and dialed. Soon, the familiar, steady voice of the ex-Special Forces soldier came through the receiver. Hello, Leo. Is everything all right? Leo glanced toward the kitchen, from which a symphony of clanging pots, pans, and knives was emerging. He steadied himself and whispered, Mr. Joe, how are your young mistress's cooking skills? There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line. Then Mr. Joe's voice, filled with a strange, complex emotion, slowly replied, "I've mentioned this before, haven't I? Back in the Army, in the all-forces combat competitions, I competed 43 times and took first place 37 times." Leo blinked, nodding subconsciously. Yeah, I remember. What does that have to do with my girlfriend's cooking?" "Mister." Joe seemed to be lost in memory. 3 of those times before I left for the competition, the young mistress, who was just a little girl then, specially made me a good luck bento box. Leo's curiosity grew. "And? Did it bring you good luck?" Another long silence. Finally, the veteran soldier's voice, filled with a world-weary sorrow, returned. "The other 6 competitions that I didn't win, 3 of them were because of those bento boxes. Once he got food poisoning. Once he had severe intestinal cramps. And once he had to be medically evacuated to the base hospital mid-competition." After reliving his past trauma, Mr. Joe seemed to compose himself. "Why do you ask?" "Leo, no reason." "Thanks, Mr. Joe. I've got to go." He hung up the phone and slowly looked up at his brothers in misfortune, who had all crowded around him, straining to listen. "You all heard that?" Kevin, Marco, Dylan, and Leon nodded, their faces pale and grim. The 5 of them looked at each other. Then, as one, they leaped to their feet and sprinted toward the kitchen. "Ladies, stop. Let's handle it." Culinary catastrophe, the guys charged toward the kitchen. But before they could even see what was happening inside, they were unceremoniously shooed away by the girls. Go, get out of the way. If you have so much energy, go tidy up the living room and take the luggage upstairs. You can cook dinner later. What's the rush?" The guys' hearts were bleeding. "What's the rush? We're trying to save our own lives." Defeated, they trudged back to the living room. As they walked, they could hear a series of panicked yelps from the kitchen. "Oops, this is the cooking wine? Then what did I just pour in? Where's the MSG? Is this sugar or salt? Oh, whatever, I'll just guess." Suddenly, there was a loud whoosh from inside, followed by a chorus of screams. Then a clang and a hiss, as if something had been extinguished with water. This was followed by a round of surprised exclamations and then enthusiastic applause. The guys, now halfway back to the living room, froze, exchanging horrified looks. Kevin's voice trembled. What in the world are they doing in there? Marco was on the verge of tears. Why? Why are they applauding while they cook? They slumped back onto the sofa, the mood heavy and grim. After a long silence, Dylan cautiously offered a suggestion. "Maybe we should write our wills now." The chaos in the kitchen continued for what felt like an eternity. The guys sitting outside and trying to fill up on snacks found that every bite was tasteless, their stomachs churning with anxiety. Finally, the noise from the kitchen seemed to die down. Footsteps approached. The guys on the sofa snapped their heads around in unison. Quinn emerged, smelling of smoke, her hair slightly disheveled, but her spirits high. Marco shot to his feet, his voice trembling with a mixture of hope and fear. Is it ready?" Quinn rolled her eyes. "Of course it's ready. You're the most impatient one. As punishment, you're not allowed to eat later." Marco's eyes lit up. He was almost overcome with joy. "Really? Holy crap. Is there a God after all?" The other guys looked at him with undisguised envy. But then Quinn burst out laughing. "I'm just kidding," she said with a wink. "With our friendship, how could I let our dear Marco go hungry? Don't worry. I'll make sure you get the first bite of every dish." She patted his shoulder magnanimously and turned back to the kitchen, completely missing the fact that her words had turned Marco to stone. The joyous tears that had been welling in his eyes were now tears of despair. Leon pulled a date cake from his pocket and offered it to him with a look of profound sympathy. "Eat this, to line your stomach for the road ahead." Marco numbly took the cake and put it in his mouth. This date cake really is the final meal of the condemned. A few moments later, the 5 guys were seated at the dining table. 4 pairs of eyes were fixed on Marco, the designated taste tester, who held his chopsticks with the grim determination of a man about to face a firing squad. Quinn came out first, carrying a platter. "First up," she announced proudly, "our head chef Tess's specialty, scrambled eggs with tomatoes." The guys leaned forward, staring at the dish, and froze. The tomatoes were in huge, unpeeled chunks. The eggs were charred black in places. A faint smell of burnt something wafted from the plate. It was a culinary disaster. The guys were silent. Marco turned to Kevin. "I thought you said your girlfriend could cook." Kevin laughed nervously. "This is her performing at her best." The table fell silent again. Leon patted Kevin's shoulder sympathetically and handed him a date cake. "You've been through a lot, man." The other girls followed with their creations. "What's this one called?" "French fry pancake." Molly beamed with pride. "Vinegar sautéed potato shreds." On the plate was a large, charred lump, with a vague outline of thick potato sticks visible within. Next came Jade's Coke chicken wings. They were a bizarre shade of green, sitting in a pool of dangerously green liquid. Jade adjusted her glasses. I wanted to see what would happen if I substituted the Coke with something else. Quinn, for her part, hadn't cooked anything. Oh, with such talented chefs in the kitchen, I didn't want to show off, she said with a flutter of her eyelashes. The guys forced themselves to nod and agree. Finally, Claire emerged from the kitchen, her expression as calm as ever, and placed her masterpiece on the table. Everyone held their breath. Hearts stopped. Scalps tingled. On the plate was a swirling mass of what could only be described as five-colored black. Guess what Claire made? Molly chirped excitedly. The guys swallowed hard. We really can't. The campus queen answered without a change in expression. Shredded pork with green peppers. The guys stared at the five-color blackness. Where were the green peppers? Where was the shredded pork? Finally, under the expectant gazes of everyone, Marco the taste tester bravely picked up his chopsticks. First bite, Tessa's scrambled eggs. He chewed, swallowed, and managed to keep his composure. It's good. Second bite, Molly's potato shred pancake. His left eye started to twitch. Third bite, Jade's green chicken wings. His entire body began to tremble. Finally, with the courage of a man marching to his doom, he took a bite of the shredded pork with five-colored black peppers. He chewed, swallowed. His chopsticks clattered onto the table. He slumped back in his chair, his eyes vacant. I think I can see my great-grandma. The kitchen had been a whirlwind of activity, but the results could only be described as a demonic feast. The girls were all a little embarrassed. Even Claire looked slightly flustered. For all her capabilities as a future CEO, cooking was the one skill she had never mastered. Seeing the crestfallen looks on their faces, Leo couldn't help but smile. He shook his head and stood up. Why don't you guys have some snacks for now? I'll make lunch. Hide and Seek, the action movie playing on the DVD, was so visually shocking that it left the teenagers on the sofa completely stunned. Quinn was the first to recover. She shot out a long leg and kicked Marco squarely in the butt. What is wrong with you? Turn it off. Marco scrambled off the sofa and lunged for the DVD player, slamming the power button. The screen went black. Silence returned to the living room. Everyone let out a collective sigh of relief. But the blush-inducing images were still burned into their minds. Even though they were all good friends, watching something like that together was mortifyingly awkward. For the guys, it felt like being caught red-handed by their parents. This landlord is a real degenerate, Kevin declared righteously. Marco and Leon nodded vigorously in agreement. Dylan scribbled furiously on his notepad and held it up. Indeed, having firmly distanced themselves from the offending material, the guys couldn't help but secretly admit that was some pretty high-quality stuff. We should probably snag a copy for ourselves later. The landlord will never know. The girls' faces were still flushed. It wasn't that they never talked about this kind of thing among themselves, but watching it with the guys was a different story. Even Claire had been momentarily stunned. But being the future CEO that she was the first to regain her composure. It's not a big deal, she said coolly. I hear this is what guys watch all the time. She turned to Leo, a playful, knowing smile on her lips. Some people even have a huge stash hidden at home. Right. Leo froze, then immediately shot back. I already told you those aren't mine. A bunch of them are Kevin's. He left them at my place and forgot to take them. Kevin's jaw dropped. What? The next second, Tessa had him by the ear. Explain yourself. Babe, I swear it wasn't me. Kevin yelped. He's slandering me. I'm innocent. After the little storm passed, things mostly returned to normal, though a residual awkwardness lingered. They decided to skip the movie for now. To make amends, Marco produced 2 decks of playing cards. The atmosphere quickly became lively again. Some started a game of poker, using Leon's date cakes as chips. Jade, naturally, found someone to play a brainy numbers game with. Everyone was having a great time. Claire wasn't particularly interested in cards, so she sat behind Leo, content to watch. Her body rested lightly against his shoulder, and every so often, she would pick up a snack. Open your mouth. Good boy. She would murmur the command softly, then pop a chip into his mouth. The others at the table, Kevin, Marco, and Quinn, watched this display, their insides twisting with a mixture of envy and disgust. Good boy? Oh my God, just kill us now. Before a single round of poker was finished, Leo had been fed a mouthful of snacks. Quinn couldn't take it anymore. She threw down her cards in defeat. I'm out. You guys play. How am I supposed to eat dinner later if I'm already stuffed with their PDA? Claire, come on. You should play too, Kevin urged. Marco nodded eagerly. Yeah. Bertha, you play a hand. Their plan was simple. If they could get her to focus on the game, the public displays of affection would stop. The result? They played spades, with Claire and Leo as partners. Claire transformed into a card shark, effortlessly leading her team to victory and utterly demolishing Kevin and Marco. Before long, the two unlucky guys' faces were covered in penalty post-it notes. "This is no fun," they grumbled, surrendering. "Bertha, you should just go back to feeding Leo snacks." As evening approached, Leo went into the kitchen to whip up a couple more dishes while the others reheated the leftovers from lunch. They all sat down for another delicious meal, after which they offered up praise to their collective savior. All hail Leo. After dinner, they all pitched in to clean up. Molly suggested a walk on the beach, but when they pulled back the curtains, they saw a miserable sleet falling outside. A gust of cold air from a cracked window sent a shiver through the room. A walk was out of the question. Slightly disappointed, they quickly rallied and decided to play an indoor group game. "How about hide and seek?" Leon suggested with his usual simple earnestness. Surprisingly, the old-fashioned game was met with unanimous approval. The two-story beach house was spacious, with plenty of rooms, perfect for 10 people to run around. They quickly established the rules. 2 seekers per round, the other 8 hide. No going outside, and no moving once you found a spot. After drawing straws, the first seekers were Leon and Jade. Thanks mostly to Jade's meticulous, logical approach, they managed to find 6 people. Only Kevin and Marco, with their superior cunning, remained hidden until the end. The next round, it was Quinn and Molly's turn. The 2 girls were relentless, searching every nook and cranny, and managed to find 5 people. Among the 3 winners were, once again, Kevin and Marco. "What can we say?" They gloated, puffing out their chests. "We're just too good." As luck would have it, they drew the straws to be the seekers for the 3rd round. "Oh, it's over for you all now," Marco crowed. "The dream team is on the hunt. Let's give them an extra 3 minutes." "Marco," Kevin declared magnanimously, "we'll still find them all easy." Their boasting fired up the competitive spirit in the others. The 2 of them stood facing a wall in the living room and began the 5-minute countdown. The rest of the group scattered, scrambling to find hiding places. Leo was also searching. He checked one room, then another, but nothing felt right. They all seemed too obvious. From the living room, he could hear the countdown. 37, 36, 35. The moment before, Leo was still looking away, pretending to be nonchalant as he peeked through the crack in a closet door. The next second, he felt the soft, fragrant body of his campus queen girlfriend pressed tightly against him. A delicate scent washed over him, and her warm breath was suddenly at his ear. Before he could even process what was happening, before he could form a question, a pair of soft, wet lips had enveloped his left earlobe. At the instant, her neat, even teeth gently bit down. Leo's mind went completely blank. A jolt, like a lightning strike, shot through his body, and he trembled uncontrollably. Half of his body went numb. A tsunami of shock crashed through him. The self-control he had so carefully cultivated, which had already been shattered into dust at the old stone chapel on Serenity Peak, was now instantly incinerated and scattered to the winds. If not for the sliver of rationality reminding him of their current situation, he might have leaped out of the closet in sheer shock. Even so, his heart was suddenly hammering at 180 miles per hour. Forcing himself to calm down, Leo did his best to ignore the wet, soft sensation on his earlobe. He lowered his voice, which still came out dry and tight. What are you doing?" In the darkness, through the faint light filtering through the closet door, Claire could just make out the crimson blush covering the side of his face. She heard the frantic, accelerating beat of his heart. And, of course, she hadn't missed the sudden, violent tremor that had run through his body. A mischievous joy bubbled up inside her. She loosened her teeth slightly, but kept her lips close to his ear, whispering, "It's fun." Her tone was so light and casual, as if she had nothing to do with it at all. Leo. Inside his head, a miniature cartoon version of himself was dancing around in a frantic panic, blood spurting from its nose. "Comrade Bertha Sue, do you have any idea what you're saying? You think this is fun? Dude, this is going to be the death of me." Deep breaths. He forced himself to take deep breaths to calm down again. His voice was steady. "Let go." Her voice was just as calm and composed. "No." As if to prove her point, she bit his earlobe again, this time a little harder. Leo jolted again. For the first time in 2 lifetimes, he was discovering that his earlobe was apparently his most sensitive weak spot. He realized he was completely powerless against his campus queen girlfriend. She had a hostage in her mouth. Time for a new tactic. He switched to a low, pleading tone. What will it take for you to let go? In the darkness, Claire's eyes seemed to light up. Without a second thought, she said, "Call me teacher." Leo, what a classic case of taking advantage of someone's predicament. And she just wouldn't let that one go, would she? Enduring the tingling, numbing sensation on his earlobe, Leo said through gritted teeth, "No way. Pick something else." Her soft lips pressed against the base of his ear again, her teeth leaving a faint mark on his earlobe. Teacher. Leo Hammer Wallace's defenses crumbled in an instant. He surrendered unconditionally. But Bertha Sue, having found her leverage, pressed her advantage with relish. "There's more. You owe me another 100 favors." Leo? He was stunned. He was about to protest furiously, but it was as if she could read his mind. Her lips kissed his earlobe again, and her tongue darted out for a feather-light touch before retreating. Half of Leo's body went so numb he nearly fell out of the closet. Deal. I've changed my mind. 200 favors. After a round of completely one-sided negotiations, Claire finally released him, thoroughly satisfied. She was now the proud owner of a perfect contract titled, "Leo Hammer Wallace owes me 300 favors." Just then, footsteps echoed from the hallway outside, along with the triumphant voices of Marco Shaw and Kevin Zhao. "We found everyone else. Just those two left. Find them." Claire's expression shifted. She quickly whispered to Leo, "Sure, they're coming." She turned her head, carefully leaning toward the crack in the sliding door to peer out. In doing so, she inadvertently turned her profile toward him. At that moment, Leo looked at his girlfriend's focused profile, but his gaze fell on her delicate, small right ear. He thought about the series of unequal treaties he had just been forced to sign under duress, about her shameless threats. The flames of vengeance roared to life within him. The cartoon mini Leo in his mind had gone full dark side. Sue, you asked for this." And so, in a flash, without giving her a chance to react, completely ignoring the approaching footsteps in the hall, Leo lunged forward. He closed the distance in an instant, and before she could turn back, he opened his mouth and bit down on her soft, tempting right earlobe. The tables had turned. Claire never expected his revenge to come so swiftly. She felt a sudden rush of hot air, and the next second, her right earlobe was captured. A sudden warmth spread through her. Her mind felt like it had been struck by thunder. The miniature cartoon version of herself instantly turned beet red, steam whistling from its ears like a boiling kettle. Claire felt as if all the blood in her body was rushing to her head. Her limbs went weak and numb, and she could barely lift her hands. She managed to press them weakly against his chest, her voice trembling. "Why you? Let go." This time, it was Leo's turn to answer without hesitation. "No, all those favors you just demanded? Canceled. All of them." The girl was completely limp, devoid of strength, and had no courage to negotiate. "Oh, okay. Holy crap, it worked." The mini Leo in his mind was practically glowing. "That easy. This move really works." He immediately pressed his advantage. "And you owe me 100 favors. Hmm?" The girl snapped back to her senses, about to protest in a mix of shame and anger. The next second, he bit her earlobe again, a little harder. Once again, all the strength was drained from her. "Oh, okay." Leo was now thoroughly enjoying himself, getting bolder by the second. "Call me Big Brother." In the darkness, the girl's face was flushed, her eyes hazy and alluring. "Be big, brother." The call was winding and tender, completely devoid of the icy aura of the campus queen. It sent a shiver down Leo's spine, nearly making him lose his composure. In that moment, an even bolder idea popped into his head. He steadied himself, leaned close to her ear, and whispered in a low voice, "Change of plans. Call me husband. Remember to vote for more chapters." Shamelessly asking for gifts. "Big chapter tomorrow. You reap what you sow, and boy, did he just sow a wild one." Before the words left his mouth, Leo himself couldn't believe he'd had the guts to make such an audacious demand of the girl widely recognized as the Ice Queen of both Northwood High and Berkeley. In the darkness of the cramped closet, as the two-word demand echoed in her ear, Leo heard his own voice and felt his heart pound at his chest. The mini Leo in his head was stunned by its own host. "Holy shit, dude, what did you just say?" And then it was instantly filled with profound respect, bowing down in awe. "Legend. No wonder I'm the mini-me and you're the main character. This is so wild. You were born for this role." But after making the demand, Leo felt a pang of regret. The air in the dark closet fell silent. He got no response from his campus queen girlfriend, and he started to feel incredibly nervous, his mind racing. Did I go too far? Did I make her angry? Maybe I should apologize? Just as Leo mustered the courage to speak again, he heard the girl's voice, as faint as a mosquito's buzz, drift through the darkness. Husband. The word hit him like a clap of thunder, exploding in the small, dark space right next to his ear. It was thick with an undeniable shyness, yet it carried a heart-stopping allure. For a moment, Leo's mind went completely blank, utterly stunned. His heart thrashed wildly, and he became oblivious to all the sounds from the outside world. He only felt his ears burning hot, and the soft body pressed against his felt like it was about to catch fire. The closet door was suddenly yanked open. Blinding light flooded in, and with it came the triumphant laughter of Marco Shaw and Kevin Zhao. "Ah, I got you." Inside the closet, Leo and Claire froze, hastily and awkwardly pulling apart. They instinctively turned to look outside, their eyes meeting the gloating, triumphant gazes of Kevin and Marco. Marco and Kevin finally got a clear look at the scene inside. What they saw was a closet barely big enough for one person, where Leo and the girl were pressed together in an incredibly intimate and ambiguous way. The girl's face was flushed, a captivating and delicate blush she couldn't hide. The smiles on the faces of the two captors froze, then vanished. Marco and Kevin, not so triumphant anymore. They had found the last two hiders. They had clearly won. But suddenly, it felt like they had lost, utterly and completely. Kevin's heart turned to ash. He turned and walked away. "This is boring. I'm done playing. I'm gonna go find my girlfriend." Marco, trembling, pointed a finger at Leo and Claire, his voice filled with infinite grief and indignation. "You can't bully people like this. Did you? Did you guys lure the single people over here, just for a public execution?" The game was over. The winners of the third round were, once again, the Seekers, Marco and Kevin. The others conceded defeat gracefully, showering the two victors with praise and compliments. But for some reason, Marco and Kevin felt no joy. One of them was slumped on the sofa, looking like he'd lost the will to live. The other was lying in his girlfriend's lap, looking utterly traumatized and defeated. Tessie Yuan held her boyfriend, stroking his head, completely bewildered. "What's wrong with you? You won. Why aren't you happy?" Hearing Tessa's question, Marco, who was sprawled on the sofa, tried to sit up and explain. But before he could speak, his eyes landed on Kevin lying in his girlfriend's arms. Thump! Marco suffered a second blow. He collapsed back onto the sofa, completely despondent. "Just kill me now." Seeing their state, the others were even more confused. What happened? Leo and Claire stood to the side, tacitly playing dumb, pretending they knew nothing. But when their eyes met for a fleeting moment, they quickly looked away. He was feeling guilty, and beneath the girl's cool and calm exterior, an unnatural blush crept onto her cheeks. As the night deepened, the group in the living room began to head back to their rooms to rest. In their assigned room, there was just one king-size bed. Leo, having finished washing up, sat on the edge of the bed, listening to the sound of running water from the en-suite bathroom. He felt inexplicably restless. It was mainly because he couldn't stop thinking about what had happened in the closet during hide-and-seek, especially the girl's whispered, "husband," which was so full of shy charm that it still made his heart race. Leo himself was a little shocked by his own audacity. Damn, was I really that bold just now? But remembering his campus queen's shy response still made his heart flutter. He kind of wanted to hear it again. Was it possible to get addicted to something like that? The sound of water in the bathroom stopped, followed by the click of the bathroom door opening. Leo snapped out of it, quickly reached over to turn off the lights, then dove into bed and pulled the covers over himself, pretending to be asleep. After what had happened earlier, he felt genuinely awkward and embarrassed facing her. Biting each other's ears? Their relationship seemed to have suddenly become much more intimate. In the darkness, he heard faint footsteps approaching. Leo lay with his back to the bathroom, eyes closed, faking sleep while holding his breath and straining his ears to listen. He heard the footsteps stop beside the bed. There was a soft, rustling sound. It seemed the girl had also sat on the edge of the bed, and then she laid down beside him, slipping under the covers. Leo felt an inexplicable guilt and nervousness, not daring to make a sound for fear of being discovered. The room was quiet. After a long time, without hearing any movement from the other side of the bed, Leo guessed she must have fallen asleep. He carefully and quietly turned over, secretly opening his eyes to check. The moment he opened them, he saw that not more than 8 inches away, Claire was also wide awake, staring right at him. Leo was so startled he nearly rolled right off the bed. Then he heard the girl's voice. "Leo." He tried to compose himself, meeting her gaze. "Yeah." In the darkness, he couldn't make out her expression clearly, but her dark, glistening eyes were fixed on him. Earlier, In the closet, it wasn't fair. Leo was stunned. He asked subconsciously, "What do you mean?" The girl seemed to purse her lips, trying hard to maintain a light, casual tone. "You have to call me something, too." A sense of foreboding sprouted in his mind, but he couldn't stop himself from asking, "Call you what?" Beside him, the girl's eyes shone like jewels in the dark. Her lips parted. The word she spoke was like a bombshell, nearly knocking him senseless. "Wife." That night, the sky was clear, and outside, the snow fell without a sound. The air was crisp and cold, but inside the small room on the second floor of the villa, in the warmth of the bed, the temperature seemed to suddenly skyrocket, becoming scorching hot. December 31 SD. Morning. Inside the villa, everyone slept in until past 10, emerging from their bedrooms, stretching and yawning with satisfaction. When they reached the living room, they saw that Leo had already prepared a simple breakfast of porridge and some side dishes, and was carrying them out from the kitchen. Claire was helping set out the bowls and chopsticks. Everyone was a little surprised. "You two are up so early?" Claire smiled faintly. I slept very well last night." As she spoke, she seemed to intentionally or unintentionally glance at the person beside her. Leo, however, seemed a bit embarrassed and awkward this morning. He coughed, didn't answer, and changed the subject. All right, let's eat. His tone held a strange hint of guilt, as if he'd been caught doing something wrong. Kevin, with his sharp observation skills, immediately noticed something was off. A suspicious look crossed his face as his eyes darted back and forth between the two of them. "Something's not right. What did you two do after you went back to your room last night?" The flame of gossip in Molly's eyes began to burn brightly. "I smell a romance brewing." Marco, as if remembering something, suddenly covered his mouth in shock. "Holy shit, don't tell me you two." Leo shot him an exasperated eye roll. "Get your mind out of the gutter. Nothing happened." In reality, nothing concrete had happened. But just thinking about last night made him feel guilty and embarrassed. Claire, on the other hand, had a calm and composed expression. "Nothing did happen. Someone just chatted with me for a while." But, as she spoke, her gaze shifted to the person arranging the plates, and the corners of her mouth suddenly curved into a slight smile. There were a few words that were very nice to hear. Everyone else was completely lost, their faces covered in question marks. But Leo's face nearly turned beet red, and his hand trembled so much he almost dropped a plate. "2 lifetimes I've lived, and this is the first time I've ever said those 2 words." He felt an inexplicable mix of embarrassment and awkwardness, yet deep down he was incredibly satisfied and proud. After a comfortable breakfast, Quinn suggested they go for a walk on the beach. The weather had cleared up, the snow had stopped, and the sun was out. The group walked out of the villa and onto the beach. The sky was bright, and sunlight spilled through the clouds, casting a gentle warmth on their skin. A sea breeze brushed against their faces, carrying a fresh, invigorating scent. The ocean was a deep blue, sparkling with golden light, a beautiful contrast to the clean white sand. The girls cheered, excitedly pulling out their phones and cameras to take pictures. The guys were relegated to being their official photographers. After the girls had their fill of photos, they finally remembered to pull the guys in for some group shots. The 3 couples, especially, had to get some romantic photos by the sea. This was when the 4 single people were busiest, tasked with taking all sorts of candid and posed shots for the 3 couples. Leon and Molly were a harmonious pair, a muscular tough guy and a cute, sweet girl. He was honest and endearingly cautious, while she was adorable and petite, clinging to him like a little bird. Jade and Quinn, who were taking their pictures, couldn't help but smile like proud ants. On the other side, Dylan, who was in charge of photographing Kevin and Tessa, wasn't smiling. It was too difficult. The couple had been trying to take some coordinated romantic photos, but Kevin was always half a beat too slow, or he'd misinterpret a loving gesture and strike the wrong pose. Dylan ended up taking a ton of photos that Tessa was unhappy with. Finally, the former literature rep couldn't take it anymore and exploded. "Kevin Zhao!" Sensing trouble, Kevin turned and ran. Tessa, fuming, picked up her small bag and chased after him. The two of them enacted a grand escape scene across the entire beach. Poor Dylan, with his short legs, had to struggle to keep up with his camera, still trying to get the shot. As for Leo and Claire, their photos were picture perfect. The young man was handsome and sharp, with a tall, lean frame. The girl was coolly beautiful and stunning, with a graceful figure. Any shot of them in the camera frame was perfect straight out of the camera, no editing needed. Marco watched them, his envy and jealousy turning to despair. So good. A damn perfect match. He furiously clicked the shutter button, as if venting his frustration. I hope you two are a perfect match in hell. For the last photo, with the beach, the sea, and the bright sky as a backdrop, the girl looked at her boyfriend as if an idea had struck her. She raised an eyebrow slightly. Look at me. Leo instinctively turned his head. The next second, the girl in the flowing white dress stood on her tiptoes, leaned forward, and planted a kiss on his lips. The image froze, captured perfectly in the camera's viewfinder. The great photographer Marco was so stunned by this public display of affection that he stood there, dumbfounded. When he came to his senses, the mini-him in his mind was contorting in sheer madness. Ehrgard, kill them all, kill them all! For lunch, the group ate at a restaurant by the beach. The owner was warm and hospitable, kindly sharing some recommendations for nearby places to visit. He also mentioned that since it was New Year's Eve, people from the scenic area management would be coming to the beach at midnight to set off a fireworks display. The group thanked the owner, paid their bill after a satisfying meal, and returned to the villa. In the afternoon, they all collapsed onto the living room sofa, a chorus of contented sighs filling the air. No one wanted to move. Someone suggested watching a movie. Under the threatening glares of Quinn and the other girls, Marco, with his heart pounding, carefully sifted through the DVDs in the TV cabinet. He finally settled on a classic 90s American comedy, Dumb and Dumber. They drew the curtains, and the living room dimmed. The LCD screen lit up, and as the movie played, bursts of laughter filled the room. Marco, Quinn, and Dylan were in stitches over the plot and the performances of Jim Carrey and Jeff Daniels. Marco excitedly turned to discuss it with the others, only to see Leon and Molly huddled together, holding hands and whispering. Kevin was diligently massaging Tessa's shoulders. And on the other side, Claire was leaning comfortably on Leo's shoulder, lazily toying with his fingers. The four single people. Suddenly, the movie didn't seem so funny anymore. Marco suggested with a heavy heart, "How about we find a Batman movie to watch? I think it's more suitable for us." The other three nodded with complicated feelings. Agreed. At 4:30 in the evening, while everyone was still lounging on the sofa, chatting and relaxing, Leo got up and went to the kitchen. It was New Year's Eve, and, as the designated chef, he had to put in some effort to prepare a grand New Year's Eve feast. He couldn't do it alone. Everyone else volunteered to help. After some consideration, Leo ruled out a few known kitchen disasters and specifically chose Jade, who was decent with a knife, along with Leon and Molly. After New Year's Day, the holiday break came to an end. After a full week of fun with their dorm mates, it was time for Tessa and Kevin to leave. The night before their departure, the members of Room 205 and Room 520 held a farewell dinner for them at Summit Grill, just outside the university's East Gate. At the dinner table, the mood was sentimental. The girls held Tessa's hand, sharing heartfelt words. The more emotional Molly's eyes even turned red as she fought back tears. The guys, on the other hand, were a bit more stoic. Kevin raised his glass, his expression solemn as he looked at the guys from Room 520. "Brothers, I'm entrusting Leo to you." The members of Room 520 solemnly raised their glasses in return. "Don't worry, he's in good hands." The four of them had reached a firm consensus during their last drinking session. From now on, Leo was their guy. No outsiders would be allowed to interfere. The four clinked their glasses and downed their drinks. That night, after saying their goodbyes, the group walked Kevin and Tessa back to their hotel. Before they parted, Tessa proposed that during the next break, everyone should visit Portland, and she and Kevin would host them. Meanwhile, Kevin pulled Leo aside, wanting to have a drunken heart-to-heart. "Leo, you and the class president, you guys have to make it work." Leo nodded, glancing at Claire, who was with the other girls nearby. "We're doing great right now." Kevin blinked, a little dazed. He suddenly remembered that before this trip, he had thought he would have to work tirelessly to get these two together, even preparing a plan to stimulate them with his own public displays of affection. Who would have thought that in the end, it would be him and his girlfriend who got a face full of their PDA? Thinking of this, the speech Kevin had prepared got stuck in his throat. In the end, he could only plead with a mournful look on his face. "Well, then, don't do too great, and don't move too fast. Okay, wait for me and my girlfriend to catch up." Leo, ? The holiday was over. The members of both dorms returned to their campus lives. It was now January. Berkeley's winter break was scheduled to start after January 24th. Before that, the final exams for the semester were fast approaching. An atmosphere of tense preparation gradually descended upon the campus. Even the laziest students were now cramming, frequently showing up in their major courses. They sat with wide eyes and pricked ears, listening as professors highlighted key topics, their notebooks filling with frantic scribbles. The university library, too, seemed to have exploded in popularity since New Year's, packed to the brim. It was nearly impossible to find an empty seat to study. Leo and Claire faced the same problem. In the weeks following the new year, the new couple was busy with classes and preparing for finals, leaving them with little time to spend together. They had hoped to study together at the library after their classes, carving out some time for just the two of them. But when they got to the library, they were met with a sea of people. Not a single empty seat was left. This meant that if they wanted to study, they had to go back to their respective dorms, completely eliminating the little bit of quality time they had left each day. Faced with this, Claire appeared calm and composed on the surface, but in reality, a cold glint flashed in her eyes. She even began to mentally calculate how much it would cost to buy the Berkeley Library, or perhaps donate a new one. Leo, ever attentive, noticed that his girlfriend was in a bad mood. On the way back to her dorm, he tried to console her. "It's okay. Finals will be over soon, and then it's winter break. Once we're back in Northwood, we'll have plenty of time together. It's not a big deal to miss a little time now." The girl nodded coolly, seemingly accepting his comfort. In her past life, she was the CEO of a publicly listed company, calm and unruffled in the face of any crisis. She could handle losses of tens of millions without batting an eye. A mere loss of a little time with her boyfriend was, naturally, completely intolerable. The Claire of her past life knew nothing about love. A single person has no say in these matters. That night, back in room 205, after the lights were out, a certain young woman lay in bed, hugging the charcoal black Leo hammer plushie, a faint gleam in her eyes. Countless ideas flashed through her mind. At times, when a particularly outrageous or dangerous thought crossed her mind, a faint, murderous aura would emanate from her. It sent a shiver down the spines of her roommates lying in their own beds, causing them to sit up in confusion. Is a window open? Why does it feel so chilly all of a sudden? The weekend. Early in the morning, Leo received a call from Claire. Her voice was light and calm as she said she had bought something and wanted him to go with her to check it out. At first, Leo didn't think much of it. He assumed his girlfriend had started trying out the increasingly popular trend of online shopping and had a package to pick up. But when he met her at the entrance of Building 16, she took his hand and led him straight off campus. At the east gate, the familiar black Maybach was waiting, and in the familiar driver's seat sat the familiar Mr. Joe. Mr. Joe? Leo stared at the former Special Forces soldier in the driver's seat, completely bewildered. What's going on? Claire had already opened the back door and settled in. The thing I bought is a little big. Mr. Joe is here to help with the paperwork and give us a ride. She gestured for Leo to join her. Hurry up. Leo, still confused, got into the car. Sitting in the back, he couldn't help but ask his girlfriend, "What did you buy?" And it was a little big. They had to go pick it up in person. But Claire just smiled faintly. "You'll see when we get there. It's nothing major, really." Leo was skeptical. He glanced at Mr. Joe in the driver's seat. "Really?" The former Special Forces soldier held the steering wheel steady, his expression composed. "Yes, Mrs. Wright." Leo grew even more suspicious. "Then why are your eyes twitching, Mr. Joe?" The soldier's arms stiffened slightly. He took a deep breath and replied steadily, "It's nothing. There's a small problem with the car. It's the car that's shaking." Leo, question mark. The Maybach, question mark. The Maybach drove along the road. The rows of houses and shops on either side gradually gave way to tall trees, and the view opened up. In the distance, he could even see a golden beach and a blue coastline. As the scenery became more and more familiar, a sense of unease began to creep in. "Wait a minute. Where are we going?" Soon he had his answer. 15 minutes later, standing once again in front of the familiar two-story beach house, Leo was utterly dumbfounded. He turned to look at his girlfriend, who was standing beside him with a completely nonchalant expression. He swallowed hard. You bought this villa?" The girl nodded. Leo felt like 1,000 question marks and exclamation points were exploding over his head. Isn't this a little impulsive?" The girl remained calm. "Not at all. It was just a small expense. And it's convenient for us to come here to study together. It's perfect." This was the solution the great heiress of the Sterling family had come up with after a night of deliberation. To have a private world for the two of them to study in. If space didn't exist, she would create it. Casually buying a villa. Perfectly reasonable, wasn't it? The beach house was the same one they had rented for New Year's. It was about 5 miles from Berkeley, a 15 to 20 minute cab ride, or half an hour by bus at most. It was convenient considering the time it took to queue up at the packed school library during finals. At least half an hour, if not an hour, with no guarantee of finding a spot. This was a far better option. The beach house was not only comfortable and spacious, but also offered a pleasant view of the sand and sea right outside the window. Studying in a place like this wasn't just ideal, it was downright luxurious. Claire was a woman of action. Once she had the idea, she made the decision and executed it swiftly. A few nights ago, she had called Mr. Joe, who contacted the owner. There was no need to haggle over the price. The entire process was handled quickly. All that was left was today's final step, collecting the keys. It really is nice, Leo said, walking around the living room and taking it all in. He couldn't help but admire it. During their New Year's stay, everyone had loved the place, praising it endlessly. Before leaving, Quinn and Marco had been especially reluctant to go, muttering about coming back again someday. Claire followed beside him, her tone light and casual. I told the owner to leave all the furniture. It saves us the trouble of buying new things. With so much space and so many rooms, we can invite everyone from room 205 and 520 over. It'll be livelier. She paused, looking at Leo with a slight arch of her eyebrow. Of course, they can't come every day, otherwise it would interfere with our time alone together. As she said this, Miss Sterling seemed to remember something. She turned to Mr. Joe, who had followed them inside, and added, "Our study time alone together." Then, without batting an eye, she explained further, "It's a Berkeley thing." The former Special Forces soldier nodded with a stiff expression. Reasonable. Inside, however, a storm was raging. A burning anger toward a certain university, second only to Harvard and Yale, ignited within him. God damn it, Berkeley! Observing the furniture and layout of the living room, Leo reached out and touched the sofa. He hadn't noticed before, but it was genuine leather. He looked up at Claire and asked with a smile, "This must have cost a fortune, right?" Claire remained calm and composed. "Pocket change." Leo couldn't help but chuckle. True, even for a two-story, beachfront villa like this, it wasn't a big deal for his girlfriend. Besides, in 2008, the real estate prices on this coast hadn't skyrocketed yet. In another 10 years, they would be at least 8 or 10 times higher. So, in a way, buying this property now was a surefire investment. But then, a thought crossed his mind, and he shook his head with a wry smile, joking, "Does this mean I'm officially living off you now?" The girl raised an eyebrow, a slight curve playing on her lips. "Help yourself. This sister's got money. I can afford a boy toy." She paused again, turning to Mr. Joe. "Buy boy toy, I mean." Before she could finish, the ex-soldier quickly cut in. "You mean a mutually supportive partnership? It's a Berkeley thing. Don't worry, miss. I understand." His tone was steady and composed. The girl nodded in satisfaction and gave an order. "The owner will be here soon. Mr. Joe, could you please handle the handover?" Mr. Joe responded calmly and turned to leave. As he walked out the door, his eyes twitched violently. This is so hard. Working for the Sterling family is so damn hard. Mr. Joe went outside to meet the owner. Inside the villa, Leo admired the elegant and comfortable interior, feeling a sense of satisfaction. He wasn't like some guys with an overly strong sense of machismo who would feel uncomfortable living in a house bought by their girlfriend, feeling the need to grit their teeth and prove they were better. Only insecure people thought that way. Being reborn had given him his greatest advantage, and it wasn't the ability to see the future. It was the confidence to live at his own pace. Making money, big money, wasn't hard for someone who had been reborn. But if he had to rush and toil away, his mind fixated on money, wouldn't he miss out on the beautiful things in life all over again? So, it was better to take things step by step to savor the beautiful experiences he had never had in his past life. He had started from such a terrible place in his previous life and had managed to climb as high as he could through his own efforts. He wouldn't waste this second chance. Besides, living off his girlfriend once in a while was actually pretty great. Not everyone had that luxury, after all. Some people didn't even have a meal to eat. "What are you thinking about?" Claire's voice brought him back to reality. He turned to see her looking at him with curiosity. Leo smiled and shook his head. "Nothing. Just thinking that with this place, we probably won't need to go to that motel by the East Gate anymore." Claire paused, a look of realization dawning on her face. Right? The motel with the uniquely named sign, a motel. Thinking of it, she felt a slight pang of regret. She had quite admired the owner of that motel. He had even surpassed Kevin and Marco in the competition for the best man spot in her mind. If they were going to be staying here often, they really wouldn't have a reason to go to the motel anymore. Just then, Mr. Joe walked in from outside. "Miss," the owner called. He said he's almost here. As he was reporting, footsteps approached from outside. Soon, the owner walked in. Leo, Claire, and Mr. Joe all turned to look instinctively. When they saw the man who walked in, they were all stunned. Question mark. The owner walked in, saw Leo, Claire, and Mr. Joe, and also paused for a moment. Then his eyes lit up. It's you guys? No one could have expected such a coincidence. The owner of this two-story beach house and the owner of a motel were the same person. Mr. Joe had handled the purchasing procedures a few days ago, but the owner hadn't been there in person. He had sent someone else to deal with it. Today was the first time he had come to handle the handover himself. Running the motel is a hobby, just something to pass the time. I have over 20 other properties on the coast, and 3 villas in this community alone. The motel owner explained succinctly, leaving Leo, Claire, and Mr. Joe completely speechless. They looked at him with newfound respect. This owner was truly a hidden master. After seeing the landlord, Mr. Chan off, Mr. Joe didn't return. He just made a call to Claire inside the house. Miss, if there's nothing else, I'll be heading back. I won't disturb your study time alone together. Even through the phone, you could feel the former Special Forces soldier's complicated and conflicted emotions as he said those last few words. After hanging up, Claire saw Leo looking at her. What did Mr. Joe say? The girl replied nonchalantly, nothing. Leo, unsuspecting, nodded. He then looked around the room. So what should we do next? His eyes landed on the red wine and champagne that Mr. Chien had left on the dining table. Involuntarily, his mind drifted to another wonderful thing the landlord had enthusiastically mentioned. The master bedroom's big bed. The remote control. Electric. It was enough to make one's imagination run wild. Claire keenly noticed him zoning out, her eyebrows raising slightly. Next, we study, of course. She paused, glancing at her little boyfriend with a half-smile. Or perhaps, someone wants to go check out the bedroom first. Leo snapped back to reality, instantly adopting a righteous expression. Of course not. Study. We must study. My mind is filled with nothing but learning. That's what he said. But inside his head, a cartoon mini Leo was diligently reading a little booklet. Principles of Operation for the Friendship Vibrating Bed. When they said study, they meant it. On their way from school, Claire had specifically asked Leo to bring his textbooks and backpack. At the time, he thought they were just going to try their luck at the library again. Now, it saved him a trip back to the dorm. In the spacious and bright living room of the villa, with the heat on and the morning sun streaming through the panoramic floor-to-ceiling windows, the young couple sat at the dining table. Surrounded by the beautiful scenery of the beach and the sea, they took out their notebooks and began to focus on their studies. Compared to the library, it was less serious and tense, and more relaxed and leisurely. Halfway through, Leo went to the kitchen to get 2 bottles of juice from the fridge. As he walked back into the living room, he looked up and saw his girlfriend still sitting at the table, completely absorbed in her review. With the heat on, the air inside was warm and comfortable. The girl had taken off her heavy coat and was wearing just a cream-colored crewneck sweater. Her long hair fell softly over her shoulders, giving her a gentle, relaxed look. She wore a pleated skirt, and her legs were wrapped in black thermal tights, outlining the graceful curves of her calves. As she worked on her problems, she had one leg crossed over the other, a slipper dangling from her foot, swinging casually back and forth. It was an unconsciously captivating sight. But more than that, looking at this scene filled Leo with a deep sense of warmth. He found himself staring, a soft smile forming on his lips, his eyes filled with gentle affection. This was a beautiful moment he had never dared to dream of. And now, he truly possessed it. It was happening right before his eyes, and it would continue to happen. As if sensing his gaze, the girl at the table stopped writing and turned to look at him, raising an eyebrow. HM. Leo smiled and shook his head, walking over with the 2 bottles of juice. Nothing. Tired? Have some juice and take a break. After studying all morning, Leo and Claire packed their bags, ready to head back to school. If they were going to study here, they still had a lot of textbooks and notes to bring over from their dorms. Also, while the villa was fully furnished, if they were going to stay here regularly, they would need to get some essential personal items. For example, Miss Sterling's charcoal black plushie, Leo Hammer Wallace. Of course, they had already discussed it. From Monday to Friday, they would stay in their dorms as usual and just come to the villa to study after class. Or on weekends, they could stay here for a couple of days. They could also invite everyone from their dorms to join them. Studying together would create a better atmosphere. And when they got tired of studying, the villa could serve as a great place for group activities. The two took the bus back to Berkeley. After returning to their respective dorms, they briefly explained the situation to their roommates. They told the story in a very understated way, but the members of room 520 and room 205 were left completely dumbfounded. Marco, Dylan, and Leon were so envious their faces were contorted. What the hell? What the hell? Wait, you just bought it? AR, my heart is breaking. Why can't I be the one living off someone? On the other side, the girls of room 205 were equally shocked. They knew about Claire's background, that she was the heiress of Sterling Holdings. But they never expected that she would just casually leave the dorm and buy the beach house they had all stayed in. It was easier than buying a head of lettuce from a store. But then Molly had a thought, and her eyes lit up. Wait a minute. Does this count as buying a marital home in advance? Wow, that's so romantic. At this, Quinn and Jade also looked moved, their gazes turning in unison toward Claire. Claire paused for a moment, as if seriously considering it. A marital home. One of them. The three girls of room 205. Molly was stunned, her whole world view shaken. Isn't this supposed to be a campus romance novel? When did it turn into a story about a domineering female CEO? Quinn's mouth twitched. We were just asking. Jade took a deep breath to calm herself and offered a cool assessment. Damn rich people. In the afternoon, after Leo and Claire had packed the things they needed, they met downstairs at Building 16. As it turned out, all the members of room 520 and room 205 had followed them, a boisterous crowd. They all righteously declared they were there to help them move and to bring some life and warmth to their new home. So, the whole group boarded a bus and descended upon the beach house. When they arrived at the villa's entrance, everyone, including Leo and Claire, was surprised to find a newly hung wooden plaque by the door. It read, L and S. Leo and Claire were puzzled. It hadn't been there when they left. Just then, a call came in from the landlord, Mr. Chien. He said he had just passed by and had left them a little gift. The two letters, L for Leo and S for Sterling, symbolized that from now on, this villa was their little home. A bold, official declaration. The group from the two dorms couldn't help but sigh in envy. Wow, that's so sweet. The landlord is really thoughtful. Claire examined the plaque, a look of growing satisfaction in her eyes. As expected of a man with so much gold in his name, his value just kept increasing. He was miles ahead of the competition. Jade looked on with a hint of admiration. Leo and Sterling. The LNS house. That sounds really nice. Beside her, Marco was green with envy. What LNS house? I say we call it the single slaughterhouse, luring all the single people in, just to cut them down. After admiring the plaque at the entrance for a while, the group walked into the single slaughterhouse. The LNS house. Returning to the villa after half a month, the mood was completely different. They looked around at the familiar, elegant decor of the living room with a complex mix of emotions. The honest Leon sighed. This must have cost so much. Quinn, closely examining the sofa she had sat on before, suddenly exclaimed, It's real leather. Marco was the quickest. He rushed up to Claire, a fawning smile on his face. Big sis Bertha, are you looking for a security guard? A dog would work too. I'm great at being a dog. Beside him, Dylan nodded vigorously, quickly scribbling on his notepad and holding it up. +1. The group toured the house excitedly. Before, they were renters. Now, looking at their roommate's future home, they couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and envy. When they heard from Leo that the former owner was the same guy who ran a motel by the East Gate, they were once again amazed. Then Marco was the first to realize. Wait, does that mean that pile of DVDs in the TV cabinet was all left by that owner? Everyone's eyes snapped toward the TV cabinet. Not only had Mr. Chien generously left all the furniture, but he had also left behind his thick stack of treasured DVDs. He had even privately shared some recommendations with Leo, rated by their level of excitement, from 3 stars to 7 stars, all sorts of genres, suitable for friendly viewing among classmates. Quinn frowned. The owner of a motel? I wouldn't have guessed. So improper for an old man. The other girls nodded in agreement. Leo couldn't help but think of the remote-controlled electric bed in the master bedroom that Mr. Chien had mentioned. He nodded in silent agreement. The even more improper stuff is upstairs. After touring the house and joking around for a bit, everyone conscientiously took out their textbooks and notes and sat down at the dining table to study. After all, with finals just around the corner, they had to get serious. Playtime was over. They were all top students who had earned their way into Berkeley, and they had the self-discipline to prove it. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, the wind howled and snow fell. Inside, The heating was on, creating a cozy and pleasant atmosphere. The young men and women sat at the long table, heads bowed in concentration. It was a rather touching scene. Except, under the table, the girl sitting opposite Leo had kicked off her slippers. Occasionally, as if by accident, she would stretch out her leg and brush it against his. It was like a little prank, a playful tease that made his heart flutter several times. He took a deep breath to calm himself and glared at her. But above the table, she maintained a cool and detached expression, not even looking up at him, as if she were completely engrossed in her studies. But below the table, her slender foot, clad in a black stocking, grew bolder, lightly caressing his calf. And at the same time, the corner of her mouth, partially hidden by her hair, curved into a barely perceptible smile. Leo couldn't take it anymore. Anger and mischief welled up inside him. "All right, Bertha Sue, you want to play games? Then don't blame me for what happens next." Without a sound, Leo slowly moved one hand under the table. While Claire was distracted, his hand shot out like lightning and grabbed her slender foot. Across the long table, the girl froze, her head snapping up to look at him, her eyes wide with a hint of panic. On the surface, Leo's expression didn't change. But inside his head, a cartoon mini Leo had transformed into a little devil, cackling evilly. "Little campus queen, you've fallen into my clutches. Let's see you escape now." He put down his pen. In full view of the girl opposite him, Leo slowly brought his other hand under the table as well. And then he started to tickle her. Claire's beautiful eyes flew wide open, and she almost cried out. But with everyone else at the table, she didn't dare make a sound, afraid of drawing attention. She could only try to control her trembling body, biting her lip to suppress the ticklish sensation spreading from the sole of her foot as she tried to pull away. But Leo wasn't about to let her go. He held on tight and kept tickling. He had the cool, icy campus queen biting her lip so hard she was barely holding back a scream, her face a deep shade of crimson. Just then, Dylan, who was sitting at the other end of the table, accidentally dropped his pen. He bent down to pick it up, and his gaze inadvertently swept onto the opposite side of the table. Dylan, a tidal wave of shock crashed through him. He shot up, his face a mask of disbelief as he stared at Claire and Leo. The sudden movement caught the attention of Marco, Quinn, and Molly, who were sitting nearby. They all looked at Dylan, confused. "What's wrong?" Dylan, trembling, pointed a finger at Leo, then at Claire. He opened his mouth to speak. No words came out. The others were completely bewildered. "What does that mean?" Dylan's face was turning red with frustration. Marco patted his roommate on the shoulder with a sigh. "Dylan, when are you going to get over this problem of not being able to talk when girls are around?" The others nodded in agreement, looking at Dylan with a mix of sympathy and understanding. Dylan, suddenly, he felt like crying. After that little scare, Leo was a bit startled himself, but seeing that no one else had noticed, he relaxed. He let out a sigh of relief and gleefully prepared to continue punishing his campus queen girlfriend. Claire, on the other side of the table, was clearly at her limit. She bit her lower lip tightly, trying to maintain her composure as she pulled out her phone and started typing a message. A moment later, Leo's phone screen lit up silently. A text from his girlfriend. "Let go." Leo grinned and typed back with one hand. "No." Her next reply was noticeably softer. "Please." His determination only grew stronger. "Nope." She gritted her teeth and typed. "Then what do you want?" Leo thought for a moment, his eyes lighting up. He quickly typed a reply with one hand. "Call me husband." He was getting really good at this move. He hadn't heard enough of it yesterday. Today, he'd settle for a text version. Seeing the message, Claire's face flushed again. She glared at Leo, then typed another message, her fingers flying across the screen. It was a thrilling afternoon of studying, filled with a rich and positive academic atmosphere. Everyone left feeling satisfied, having experienced the joy of learning. Except for Dylan, who had mixed feelings. He had seen some things a single person should not see. But Dylan should probably consider himself lucky that he only saw the first half of the story under the table. The thrilling developments of the second half were definitely not suitable for all audiences. In the evening, the study session wrapped up. Everyone stood up, stretching their tired bodies. Marco, who had finished reviewing notes for 3 classes in one go, was full of confidence. He beat his chest and guaranteed he would ace his finals. "I'm going to be in the top 3 of my major for GPA this semester," he declared. 2 weeks later, he was in the top 33. The others also felt that the afternoon study session had been incredibly effective. The comfortable environment and good atmosphere of a single slaughterhouse were a huge step up from the school library. They all thought about coming back more often. So, a group of them looked at the young couple of the house with pitiful, hopeful eyes. Claire and Leo had no objections and readily agreed. Having more people around made for a better study environment. The members of both dorms were overjoyed, profusely thanking them and vowing to take care of all the snacks and cleaning from now on. Leo and Claire listened with half an ear, their minds elsewhere. The observant Jade suddenly noticed something. "Why are both of your faces a little red?" Everyone looked over and saw that she was right. "They are. Leo, your face is even redder." Leo forced himself to remain calm. "It's nothing. The heat is on too high. It's from the warm air." Beside him, Claire also wore a nonchalant expression. Indeed, the others accepted the explanation without suspicion. Seeing that they believed him, Leo breathed a sigh of relief and secretly glanced at his girlfriend. She happened to be looking at him at the same moment. A bewitching glint flashed in her eyes, and the corners of her mouth curved upwards. Right before his eyes, Claire subtly moved her leg. The heel of her slender right foot lifted off the ground, and she casually rotated her toes. It was a challenge, an invitation. Leo froze, then quickly turned his head away, pretending not to see. But his pupils were shaking violently. "This Bertha Sue. She's going to be the death of me." That evening, the group stayed at the single slaughterhouse for dinner. Leo was in charge of cooking again. The others enthusiastically offered to help, not wanting him to slave away alone. But Leo refused them all. It wasn't that he didn't appreciate the help. He just couldn't bear to let everyone suffer through their cooking. Any one of them could whip up a meal that was potentially lethal. Leading the pack of culinary disasters was Bertha Sue. Of course, Comrade Bertha was in a different category, exempt from criticism. She was Chef Leo's girlfriend. Girlfriends were special. Whatever a girlfriend did was right and deserved praise. After a satisfying meal, everyone at the table rubbed their full bellies and once again praised their savior. Eating together at the villa again made them miss Kevin and Tessa. So, they decided to give the couple an important call. When the call connected, Kevin and Tessa happened to be having dinner together as well. Hearing that the group was at the beach house again, they were filled with envy. "You guys went again?" Marco snatched the phone to explain. "Not just visiting. Big Sis Bertha bought the house." The couple on the other end was stunned into silence. Kevin couldn't help but stammer. "What the hell?" After getting the full story, a deeply envious Kevin turned to his girlfriend and declared, "Honey, when are you going to buy a house so I can live off you too?" "Ouch, ouch, ouch." The call ended. It seemed the reckless Kevin had been dragged away by his girlfriend for some ear-pulling re-education. The group at the villa burst out laughing. It was getting late. With a great deal of tact, the members of both dorms said their goodbyes to Leo and Claire. They knew to leave the young couple some private time. After all, it was their first night in their new home. They had to celebrate with some quality time together, right? After everyone had left, only Leo and Claire remained in the villa. They looked at each other, and the memory of their thrilling battle under the table made them both feel a little awkward and shy. That had been really bold. What if someone had found out? "Oh, Dylan found out. That's fine. He can't talk." Taking a deep breath, Leo tried to calm himself and suggested nonchalantly, "Want to watch a movie?" Claire nodded in agreement. Okay. So, the girl made herself comfortable on a living room sofa, while Leo went to the TV cabinet to search for a movie. It was all Mr. Chin's collection, a pile of DVDs labeled with 3, 4, 5, or 6 stars. Leo even found 2 7-star discs, specially marked as enthusiastically recommended. His curiosity was piqued. He really wanted to see just how spectacular a 7-star DVD could be. In the end, he suppressed the urge, but he couldn't find anything particularly interesting among the other, more legitimate discs. So he just picked up the remote, turned on the TV, and started channel surfing. After flipping through a couple of channels, he landed on a rerun of Power Rangers. His interest was immediately piqued. "Let's watch this." Claire, leaning back on the sofa, raised an eyebrow and commented coolly, "Childish." But she didn't object. Seeing him happily plop down beside her on the sofa, completely engrossed in the TV, a smile touched her lips. Even if he was a child, he was her child, and he deserved to be spoiled. The episode reached the part where the monster reappeared, and the hero was about to morph and fight. Leo watched with rapt attention. At the most exciting moments, he was so fired up he wanted to jump up and shout, "It's morphin' time." What? Immature? You gotta be kidding. He'd still believe in the Power Rangers when he was 60. After the episode ended, he was still buzzing with excitement. He turned to ask his girlfriend for her thoughts. The girl raised an eyebrow and offered her critique. It was good. Then, as if a thought occurred to her, she looked at her boyfriend and posed another question with great interest. Me or the Power Rangers? Who would you choose? Huh. Leo was completely stumped. Holy crap, what kind of classic girlfriend question was this? It was the ultimate test. If the Power Rangers and your girlfriend were drowning, who would you save first? Surprise. Third chapter today. Remember to vote for more chapters. And don't forget to send gifts, big or small. This is how you know a couple is in sync. The thought had barely crossed Leo's mind when his campus queen girlfriend amended her question. If I and the Power Rangers were drowning, who would you save first? The girl leaned back comfortably against the sofa, arms crossed, looking at him with a lazy, relaxed posture. Her expression was serious, but her eyes were dancing with laughter. This wasn't some petty test. It was just a bit of playful fun between them. If Kevin and Marco had been there, their minds would have already broken, their faces contorted in a silent scream of, just kill all the lovey-dovey couples already. Leo caught on. He looked at his girlfriend, who was patiently awaiting his answer, and happily played along. He stroked his chin, thinking seriously, and offered an objective assessment. You know how to swim? The memory of her at the Bridgeport splash zone last summer, getting hurt but pinched 13 times in 1 minute, was still vivid. The girl raised an eyebrow. Let's assume I don't. Who do you choose? Leo continued to think seriously, posing a cautious question. Which Power Ranger? Huh. This time it was the girl's turn to be stumped, a large question mark appearing over her head. Leo explained with a straight face. Some Rangers are better in water. The Blue Ranger, the Black Ranger from Dino Thunder, they're strong. The Red Ranger from Mighty Morphin isn't great. Claire was both exasperated and amused by his detailed, earnest analysis. Fine, let's say it's a Ranger who can handle water. Leo, is the Ranger at their normal height or human size? Claire. The couple bickered back and forth, thoroughly enjoying themselves. The Power Rangers can do flying kicks. So can I. The girl glanced at him, her eyes carrying a playful threat. Want to find out? The Power Rangers can shoot energy beams. So can I. With that, the girl, maintaining her cool demeanor, made a gesture like she was firing a laser blast at him. It was an incredibly cute, out-of-character moment. Leo burst out laughing. The more he looked at her, the more content he felt. Ah, having a girlfriend was the best. Finally, Leo delivered his killer point with righteous conviction. The Power Rangers can morph out of their clothes. The girl's eyes didn't even blink. So can I. Leo stared at her, completely bewildered. The corner of the girl's mouth curved into a smile. She leaned in, her lips close to his ear, and whispered, I can't morph, but I can make my clothes explode off. Her tone was suddenly incredibly seductive. Leo's mind went blank, and he almost had a nosebleed. No question about it. Who cares about the Power Rangers? Girlfriend wins, every time. Of course, it was all just talk. They were bold with their words, but neither of them had the courage to actually go through with it. For one thing, they had only just started dating. Holding hands, hugging, and kissing were already fast progress. There was no need to rush things. If they rushed any faster, they'd leave the couple in Portland in the dust. For another, as people who had been reborn, one felt her boyfriend was just an 18-year-old boy, while the other felt his girlfriend was just an 18-year-old girl. Neither of them was quite mentally prepared. They both felt a little like they were robbing the cradle. In short, the time wasn't right. Leo wasn't in a hurry. He was perfectly happy with their relationship as it was. He wasn't Kevin, after all. He wasn't that easily swayed by lust. So, what are you doing right now? Upstairs in the master bedroom, Claire raised an eyebrow, looking coolly at Leo and the remote control for the electric bed in his hand. Leo quickly hid the remote behind his back and gave a guilty laugh. Oh, nothing. Just checking to see if this thing Mr. Chien mentioned actually works. He tried to look righteous, but his girlfriend saw right through him. She held out her hand, her tone light and casual. Give it to me. Leo obediently handed over the remote. Claire took it, weighed it in her hand, and glanced at the friendship vibrating bed. Friendship vibrating bed. Looks innocent. JPG. Confiscated. Claire casually put the remote away and raised an eyebrow at him. I'll be holding on to this. Time for bed. Leo looked wistfully at the confiscated remote and obediently got into bed. Oh. The next day, Sunday, Mr. Zhou came by in the morning, helping to deliver various daily necessities and larger purchases. When he saw the wooden plaque hanging by the door, the former Special Forces soldier stood frozen for a full 3 minutes. When he heard that it was a gift from the motel owner, Mr. Chien, his eyes started to twitch. Old grudges and new hatreds welled up inside him, and he burned with rage. This thief is a serious threat. If the big boss ever finds out and decides to settle scores, I have to make sure this Chien guy is the first one I throw under the bus. At the same time, at a motel outside the university's East Gate, the man at the front desk, Mr. Chien, sneezed, feeling a little puzzled. He then looked at the shy but well-matched young couple in front of him, who were too embarrassed to ask for one room. After a moment of thought, he pulled out a poster. Our establishment offers friendship suites for men and women. The last couple. Oh, sorry, the last pair of good friends who tried it said it was great. Mr. Chien said this without batting an eye. The morning was spent setting up their new home. With Mr. Zhou, a former Special Forces soldier, helping out, many of the heavy lifting tasks were taken care of. This was the first time in her reborn life that Claire was living with her boyfriend. Although it was only for weekends for now, it didn't stop her from enthusiastically decorating their new home. She wanted to change the curtains here, add a small recliner there. Matching couples' slippers, matching couples' toiletries, everything had to be replaced. Mr. Zhou followed his young miss around, busy as a bee. He wasn't tired, but his eye was twitching so much it was starting to go numb. Finally, even Claire felt a little bad for him and said apologetically, Mr. Zhou, you should stay for lunch. I'll cook. The Special Forces soldier's hair stood on end and a chill ran down his spine. He quickly composed himself and said calmly, You're too kind, miss. It's all part of my job. Claire shook her head, insisting, But you've worked so hard. Stay for a meal. It's been a while since I cooked for you anyway. Mr. Zhou's eyelid twitched violently. It's fine, really. In the end, Leo came to the rescue, smiling and announcing that he would be cooking lunch. The ex-soldier, having just been saved from a near-death experience, looked at Leo with a face full of gratitude and relief. Good kid. All my efforts to cover for him in front of the big boss weren't in vain. Speaking of the big boss, after lunch, Claire called Mr. Zhou upstairs to help with some other arrangements. Leo was in the living room downstairs. He turned on the TV and happened to catch the news. The city had just announced the routes for a new batch of subway construction projects. They were identical to what Leo remembered from his past life. As he had predicted, the plans bypassed the old district where the Silverwood Mall was located. Leo remembered his conversation with the man from the convenience store. If, as the man had said, Sterling Holdings was recently acquiring mall properties, he wondered if his future father-in-law had successfully avoided the Silverwood Mall pitfall, just as he had predicted. Just as he was thinking this, by an incredible coincidence, he received a phone call. The caller ID on his phone screen read, Brother with no money for smokes. He answered the call and heard the familiar, hearty laughter of a middle-aged man. Little brother, that's amazing. You were right on the money. Charles Sterling's call was precisely about the newly announced subway routes. And on the call, he confirmed to Leo that Sterling Holdings had indeed accurately avoided the Silverwood Mall pitfall in its latest round of acquisitions. Of course, to maintain his cover, the chairman vaguely explained that he had friends at Sterling Holdings and had gotten the inside scoop. Leo, on his end of the line, smiled. See, I told you, Chairman Sterling's judgment and vision are top-notch. He wouldn't fall for that. The chairman himself, being praised to his face like this, felt a wave of satisfaction wash over him. Ha ha. Little brother, you're too kind. That Charles Sterling fellow just has a little bit of luck on his side, that's all. He doesn't deserve such high praise, ha ha. Leo listened to the hearty, smug laughter coming from the phone, completely baffled. This guy was really strange. This was the second time. He was praising his future father-in-law. So why was this guy laughing so happily? Finally managing to stop laughing, Charles Sterling's admiration for Leo grew even stronger. This time, avoiding the Silverwood Mall acquisition was a decision he had been leaning towards himself. But he had been hesitant. It was Leo's words back then that had helped him make up his mind. Now that the results were out, that one correct decision had saved Sterling Holdings at least $300 million. This young man he had met by chance was truly remarkable. For a moment, the chairman felt a strong desire to recruit him. Little brother, to have such insight at your age is incredible. Do you have any plans for your future? If you're interested, my connections at Sterling Holdings could get you an introduction. A company like Sterling Holdings would never let go of a talent like you. Leo was taken aback, then smiled. Thank you, but I'm only a freshman. It's too early to think about career planning. Besides, if I ever have the chance to work at Sterling Holdings in the future, I probably won't need your help. Charles listened to the first part and nodded in agreement, but the last sentence made him raise an eyebrow. What do you mean? You have connections at Sterling Holdings too. Leo smiled and gave a vague reply. You could say that. Charles felt a little competitive. He emphasized, Brother, I'm not trying to brag, but your connections probably can't compare to mine. Leo politely agreed, but on his end, he couldn't help but smirk. He was just being nice, not wanting to scare the guy. Otherwise, what were his connections compared to Leo's? My future father-in-law is the chairman of Sterling Holdings. On the other end, Charles was also feeling a little frustrated. If he weren't trying to hide his identity and keep a low profile, would he need to prove his connections to anyone? Damn it, I'm a chairman of Sterling Holdings. Fortunately, neither of them lingered on the topic for too long. They moved on to casual conversation. Charles, curious, started asking about gossip. How are things going with you and your little girlfriend? Her dad hasn't found out, has he? Leo answered cheerfully, no, we're doing great. She even bought a small villa by the beach for us to stay at on weekends. We're busy setting up the new place right now. On the other end of the line, Charles was amazed. No way. You're already living off your girlfriend. Is your girlfriend a little rich girl? Leo smiled. I guess so. Her dad is pretty wealthy. The chairman on the other end had a sudden realization, then laughed heartily. Same difference. Her dad's money is for her to spend. That's my brother. You've got skills. He even started giving Leo enthusiastic advice. Then don't you be shy, kid. Spend what you need to. You don't need to feel bad about spending your future father-in-law's money. Leo nodded, humbly accepting the advice. Then he casually asked about the man's situation. How's your daughter doing? Any signs of a boyfriend? Charles's laughter was confident and hearty. No way. My precious daughter. She's not interested in just anyone. Besides, I've assigned my most trusted employee to keep an eye on her. If anything happens, as her father, I'll be the first to know. Just then, on the second-floor walkway above the living room, a young woman was walking by, chatting with her driver. Mr. Joe, remember to buy some plants for the hallway to liven it up. Through the phone, the sound was faint and indistinct. But Charles on the other end paused, subconsciously thinking the voice sounded familiar. Little brother, who's that talking over there? Leo looked up. Oh, that's my girlfriend. The chairman understood, exclaiming in surprise, your girlfriend has a really nice voice. For a girl named Bertha, having a voice like that was truly a rare gift. As they were talking, the steady reply of a certain former Special Forces soldier came from the second floor. Don't worry, miss. I'll go buy the plants this afternoon. On the other end of the line, the chairman paused again. Although it was faint, he felt that this second voice also sounded a bit familiar. Brother, who's that now? Leo explained naturally. An uncle who's here to help. The chairman understood again and laughed. I can't hear clearly through the phone, but at first listen, those two voices sound a lot like two people I know. Leo was surprised. Really? What a coincidence. Charles also laughed. Yeah, it is quite a coincidence. Just then, a girl's voice called from upstairs. Hey, you lazy bum downstairs, come up here for a second. Leo snapped to attention. Coming. He said into the phone, my girlfriend's calling me, I gotta go. Charles on the other end nodded subconsciously. All right, you go ahead. The call ended. Leo put away his phone and hurried upstairs. He saw his girlfriend looking at him from the hallway, an eyebrow raised. Who were you on the phone with for so long? Leo explained casually, just that guy I told you about before. Just chatting. Then he rolled up his sleeves and walked over enthusiastically. What do you need me to do? At the same moment, in the chairman's office on the 37th floor of the Sterling Holdings headquarters, Charles Sterling, having put down his phone, frowned slightly. The last voice he heard on the call felt even more familiar. Why did he feel like that girl's voice sounded a little like his precious daughter's? But after a moment's thought, the chairman smiled and shook his head. I'm overthinking it. That kid's girlfriend's name is Bertha. What could she possibly have to do with my daughter, Claire Sterling? The last 2 weeks of the semester were a frantic blur of final exam prep. Everyone was completely buried in books. The L&S house was pretty much fully furnished and decorated, but Leo and Claire hadn't completely moved out of their dorms. They treated it like a weekend getaway, staying there on Saturdays and Sundays while living on campus from Monday to Friday. Sometimes, if they had a free afternoon or got out of class early, they'd meet up at the house to study. Occasionally, their roommates from both dorms would come over for a group study session, but everyone knew the drill. Study was study. When it was time to go, they said their goodbyes and cleared out. Mr. Joe made a point of stopping by every weekend to see if his young master and mistress needed anything. Of course, his more important role was to act as the eyes and ears for his boss, Charles Sterling of Sterling Holdings. He was tasked with gathering intelligence on his precious daughter's life and reporting back. An entire semester had nearly passed, and the great Miss Sterling, who had been in the city for almost half a year, had not once returned to her father's local home. Other than a forward text message, Happy New Year, on New Year's Day, she showed no sign of missing him in the slightest. It left the chairman of Sterling Holdings clutching his phone like a lifeline, rereading those 4 words over and over for a sliver of comfort. He missed her terribly, but his guilt and shame kept him from visiting her at school. So he delegated. He piled more and more tasks onto his trusted right-hand man, even instructing him to keep a dedicated notebook. Every time he saw the young miss, he was to record every possible detail of her daily life for the boss to review later. For a retired Special Forces soldier, a mission from the chairman was something to be taken with the utmost seriousness. He would not fail. The problem was in the dining room of the LNS house at the table. "Open up," Claire said, spearing a piece of cut watermelon with a plastic fork. She held it out to Leo's mouth with a natural, easy grace. He dutifully leaned forward and ate it in one bite. "Is it good?" "It's good." She nodded, satisfied, then made her request. "Okay, now you feed me." Leo agreed with a nod, picked up his own fork, speared a piece of watermelon, and fed it to his beautiful girlfriend. "Is it good?" Resting her chin on her hands, her eyes curving into crescents, Claire looked at him, a smile dancing in her gaze. "Sweet." Leo's eyes happened to drift to the side, where he saw a certain retired Special Forces soldier standing frozen, a small notebook and pen in hand, looking as if he'd been turned to stone. "Mr. Joe, won't you have some?" Leo asked kindly. "Mr. Joe, no, thank you. I'm full." He looked down at the notebook in his hand, his mind a tangled mess. How was he supposed to record this? How in hell was he supposed to write this down? Taking a deep breath, then another, the retired soldier tried to calm himself. He steeled his resolve, gritted his teeth, and put pen to paper. With a flourish, he wrote, "Miss Sterling and a classmate shared watermelon." The watermelon was sweet. Having broken the seal, the former Special Forces soldier felt as if he had unlocked a new level of enlightenment, a door to a whole new world. In the kitchen, Leo stood at the stove, cooking. Claire had wrapped her arms around him from behind, her head resting on his shoulder, a perfectly justifiable form of companionship. "Mr. Joe," with an unshakable expression, calmly wrote. The classmate cooked. Miss Sterling provided companionship. Miss Sterling is very supportive. In the living room on the sofa, the young couple leaned back comfortably, watching a movie together. Before long, Claire's body had melted into Leo's arms. Sitting behind them, the retired soldier wrote furiously. Miss Sterling and the classmate watched a movie. The movie was good. Miss Sterling's posture was comfortable. Later, as the couple strolled through the front yard of the LNS house, the moonlight washed over the scene in a silvery white glow, casting a soft, hazy aura over the house and lawn. The atmosphere was perfect. Claire turned to Leo, a smile playing on her lips, and gently stood on her toes to press a light kiss against his. From a distance, standing by the door, the retired soldier's hand twitched, nearly drawing a long, black slash across his notebook. He forced himself to focus. The man who had faced down countless dangers on the battlefield now grit his teeth, channeling the spirit of a literary master. With another flourish, he wrote, Miss Sterling and a classmate took a walk on a winter night. The moon was big and round. Excellent, excellent. In the chairman's office on the 37th floor of Sterling Holdings headquarters, Charles Sterling nodded in satisfaction as he reviewed the notes submitted by his right-hand man. He looked up at his subordinate with deep appreciation. You've worked hard. Mr. Joe remained stoic. You're too kind, Mr. Sterling. A cold sweat was secretly trickling down his back. Don't be modest, Charles said, waving a hand and lavishing praise. These notes are very detailed. This is exactly what I wanted. Keep it up. He paused, then frowned slightly. There's just one thing. In the future, try to include fewer scenic descriptions. What's all this about the moon being big and round? That's not necessary. Record more specific details. Mr. Joe nodded gravely. Inwardly, he was sweating bullets. I can't get any more specific. Any more specific, and someone's going to die. Oblivious to his subordinate's distress, the chairman picked up the notebook again, a wave of warmth washing over him. It looks like my precious daughter is doing quite well at school, he mused. She gets along so well with her classmates. That girl. I never thought she'd actually make friends in college. Berkeley is a good school. I actually know a few of the deans and the chancellor there. The next time I see them, I'll have to thank them personally. Mr. Joe bowed his head respectfully in agreement. But as he did, his eyes widened in sheer terror. After a moment of sentimental reflection, Charles flipped through the notebook, the written words seeming to stir his longing for his daughter. Yeah, but that girl, really? She's been in the city for half a year and hasn't seen her old man once. Even though she sent me a whole 4-word text message, she misses me but won't say it directly. This won't do. The chairman made a decision. After her finals are over, you go and tell her. She has to come home for a visit. We need to have a proper father-daughter reunion. Sensing the depth of his boss's feelings, Mr. Joe was touched and nodded solemnly. Yes, sir. Then, as if remembering something, Charles glanced at the notebook and laughed heartily. Oh, right. Didn't she make some good friends, good classmates? She can invite them along. As her father, I'll treat them all to a nice dinner. Mr. Joe. Author's note. 3 chapters today. Righteously demanding gifts. Remember to click Urge Update. The upcoming plot on brainstorming is hilarious. Ha ha. Time drifted by. When thick flakes of snow began to fall from the sky, blanketing the Berkeley campus in a layer of silver, the freshmen's first semester finally came to an end. It was a 5-day exam week. Every freshman was drowning in a sea of textbooks and practice problems, and Leo and Claire were no exception. For the final week, they moved back from the single slaughterhouse and returned to their respective dorms to study. For one, it was closer and more convenient to get to the exam halls each day. For another, the atmosphere at the beach house, with its roaring fireplace, central heating, and plush sofa, was just a little too comfortable, a little too lazy. Especially for Leo. He felt a bit like an emperor in a historical drama, lost in pleasure and neglecting his duties. Every evening, after studying, he and Claire would end up curled together comfortably on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket, watching a movie. At first, he tried to reason with himself. A beautiful woman is a hero's downfall. Leo Wallace, how can you be so undisciplined? Have you forgotten the study plan you made? The next day, he was right back on the sofa, wrapped in a blanket, watching a movie with his girlfriend. A few days later, staring at the half-finished review materials, a sudden realization struck him. He had to make a change. With his firm insistence, Claire finally relented, and they returned to the dorms. Although she understood and agreed with the arrangement, she was still a little reluctant. So, they reached a compromise. They would study in their own dorms, fine, but they had to meet up for dinner and a walk every evening. And they had to kiss exactly 3 times a day. It's a scientific fact. Kissing is beneficial to a couple's health, she stated with a perfectly straight face at the dining hall table. Leo thought about it. He seemed to recall seeing something similar in a news article in his past life. Whether it was real science or fake science didn't matter. A kiss was a kiss, and that was real enough. Most guys could only dream of kissing a girlfriend as beautiful. He nodded enthusiastically. Reasonable. Listening to this negotiation, the other members of room 205 and room 520, sitting at the same table, felt their faces twitch and their eyes throb. They were about to crawl under the table and wither away from sheer agony. Oh sure, that's reasonable. Why don't you two just kill us? We can't live like this. And no one can live like this. However, Leon, the date cake bro, was inspired. He leaned over to his girlfriend, Molly, and whispered, if science says so, should we give it a try? So far, they had held hands and put their arms around each other. They had even slept in the same room at the single slaughterhouse, albeit in separate beds. But they had never kissed. Molly was happily nibbling on a digestive date cake her boyfriend had given her. Hearing his words, she froze, the half-eaten cake momentarily forgotten. Her face flushed a light pink, but she gave a tiny, almost imperceptible nod. Okay. Leon's heart exploded with joy. This was amazing. Praise science. In the blink of an eye, exam week was over. As Leo walked out of the classroom after his last final, he could hear cheers erupting from the buildings all around him. Freedom. With finals finished, the Berkeley students were about to start their winter break. That night, the friends from room 520 and room 205 gathered for a celebratory dinner at Summit Grill just outside the east gate of the campus. Over barbecue and beer, the atmosphere was relaxed and jubilant. Marco shot down half a bottle of beer, slammed it on the table, and boasted, "This semester's finals. I totally aced them." Everyone laughed and cheered. According to school rules, the dorms would be cleared out starting the next day as students prepared to leave. But for the gang from 520 and 205, thanks to Claire's magnificent generosity, they had a place to stay for 2 more days before heading home. The next day, after packing up their things, they all piled onto a bus and descended upon the LNS single slaughterhouse house. The familiar, elegant decor, the cozy living room, the warm fireplace, the soft sofa. The sight nearly brought tears to their eyes. This is amazing. Damn, having a home base like this after finals and before break is the best thing ever. The girls from room 205 turned in unison to look at Claire with deep affection. Claire, you magnificent, rich woman. Having you is a blessing. The guys from room 520 pulled Leo aside for a heartfelt, serious talk. You better treat Bertha well. A rich woman like that. Wait, no, a good woman like that. You can't ever let her down. As evening approached, it was almost time for dinner. The fridge was running low on ingredients, so Leo decided to make a run to a nearby supermarket. Marco volunteered to go with him. Just as they were about to leave, his girlfriend called out, "Wait a second." Leo turned. Claire got up from the sofa and glided over to him. In front of everyone, she stood on her toes and gave him a light peck on the lips. Then she pulled back, raising an eyebrow slightly. "We haven't kissed yet today. 2 more to go." Everyone else. Standing right next to Leo, Marco witnessed the whole thing up close. He suffered the most damage. His face twitching, he turned and walked right out the door. "Just kill me, why don't you? The single slaughterhouse. They really do just drag you in here and slaughter you, don't they?" Leo and Marco took the bus to a nearby supermarket. Pushing a cart through the aisles of shelves and refrigerated cases, they chatted while picking out groceries. Marco sighed dramatically. "Man, now that the boss and our third brother are both in relationships, when is it going to be my turn for a sweet romance?" As the self-proclaimed social butterfly of their dorm and the Casanova of Berkeley, Marco was actually pretty good-looking. He had an outgoing, friendly personality and a witty sense of humor. He had no trouble getting dates with girls from various departments, and his dates were always attractive and stylish. But strangely, despite flitting from flower to flower, Marco had ended the semester without ever getting into a real relationship. According to him, none of them felt right. Going on 1 or 2 dates is fine, but when it comes to taking it further, some of them I just didn't feel a connection with, and others were just way out of my league. Leo glanced at his roommate, surprised that the normally flamboyant and confident Marco had these kinds of worries. Soon, the procurement team returned from the supermarket to the LNS house. In the living room, the others, who were watching TV or playing cards on the sofa, looked up in surprise as Marco walked in first. "What's up, Marco? You look grim." Marco's mouth twitched into a dry laugh. "It's nothing, nothing. The wind outside is just really strong. My face is a little stiff, Sitting nearby, Dylan eyed his roommate suspiciously. Though he couldn't speak, he detected the familiar scent of a clown. With the groceries back, the plan for the night was hot pot, perfect for a winter evening. It also saved Leo some effort. He just had to whip up a couple of simple side dishes, and everything else, meatballs, sliced lamb, and beef, could be tossed into the pot. Outside the floor-to-ceiling windows, snow drifted down. Inside, the fireplace crackled. Everyone gathered around the dining table as the hot pot bubbled, gradually releasing an intoxicating aroma that made their mouths water. The atmosphere was warm and joyful. Before long, the pot was boiling, and everyone eagerly dipped their chopsticks in, adding all sorts of ingredients. Leo brought out the red wine and champagne that the landlord, Mr. Chin, had left as a gift, along with a set of wine glasses. For a moment, they were a picture of high-class sophistication, sipping red wine with their hot pot. Quinn Liu was the first to raise her glass. "All right, everyone, we're all heading home for the break tomorrow. Let's count this as an early New Year's celebration for both our dorms. To a new year filled with success and happiness." Everyone cheered in agreement, smiling as they clinked their glasses together. But after the first sip of red wine, many of them grimaced. They were still too young to appreciate such a refined beverage. Beer was much better. The wine glasses were quickly cleared away and replaced with 2 cases of beer, which they had bought and stored in the pantry before leaving last time. With beer in hand, the mood at the table instantly became even more lively and relaxed. Quinn's toast about New Year's wishes led the conversation to their trip to the chapel on Serenity Peak on New Year's Day, where they had all drawn fortune sticks. "I wished for academic success," Jay Jiang said calmly, adjusting the glasses on her nose. Everyone nodded, unsurprised. A true scholar, through and through. Quinn downed her glass of beer and slammed it on the table. "I wish for love," she announced boldly. "For tall, handsome, caring, and rich Prince Charming to finally show up." She giggled. "And of course, he's got to be well-built, too." Her comment made the other girls blush and playfully scold her. The guys glanced at each other, their gazes finally landing on their dorm's number 1, Leon. Filled with envy, they silently made a pact. "We have to start hitting the gym." When it was Dylan's turn, it turned out he had also drawn a fortune. He had wanted to ask the divine when he would finally overcome his shyness and be able to talk to girls. He didn't get a fortune, but he did meet a monk from the chapel. After a brief chat, the monk declared him a once-in-a-century prodigy for practicing a vow of silence and nearly shaved his head on the spot. As Marco recounted the story, everyone roared with laughter. The girls, once they had recovered, looked at Dylan with sympathy. "Don't worry, Dylan, you'll get there," one of them comforted. Whenever you want to practice talking to a girl, you can call any of us. We'll be there. Dylan was visibly moved and nodded gratefully. But when his eyes met Jade's eager expression, a shiver went down his spine, and he immediately shook his head like a drum. Anyone but her. Definitely not her. When the topic came to Marco, he was surprisingly candid. Same as Quinn. I wish for love, he admitted. Then he added smugly. When I made my wish, I was so sincere that the heavens were moved. They gave me a top-tier fortune. Everyone was envious and curious about what kind of wish could have been so powerful. When they asked, Marco replied without batting an eye. I wish for it in exchange for 3 years of hair loss for all my brothers and sisters here. The table fell silent for a moment. Then, in a furious uproar, they practically flipped the table and gave Marco a thorough beatdown. Only after he was left bruised and swollen did everyone return to their seats, feeling much refreshed. Molly Tang, as if remembering something, looked curiously at Leo and Claire. Hey, she said, you two got the best fortunes, right? I remember they were great fortunes, the highest level. Molly's reminder jogged everyone's memory. That's right, they were. A bunch of people crowded around to see them. They were so jealous. Jade, who had the best memory, recalled, I think the fortune read something like, when the time comes, heaven and earth lend their power, and the fated stars, forever apart, can finally meet? The others nodded in agreement. Marco looked confused. What does that even mean? What are fated stars? Quinn shot him a look, as if he were an idiot. You don't even know that? How did you get into Berkeley? The fated stars are. She trailed off, then turned to her roommate and waved a hand dismissively. Jade, you take this one. In the end, it was the resident scholar who explained. The fated stars, Shun and Shang, are from an ancient legend about 2 sons of an emperor who were turned into 2 stars. One rises as the other sets, so they never appear in the sky at the same time. But the fortune says that these stars can meet. It means that with the immense power of heaven and earth, an impossible destiny can be changed. What was meant to be an eternal separation becomes a fortunate reunion. Jade paused, frowning in thought. I've never actually heard of a fortune like this before, she commented. But if such a destiny truly exists, it would be incredibly rare. The others listened enlightened. Marco, however, remained skeptical. Sound dramatic, he scoffed, but it doesn't seem very accurate. Leo and Bertha were desk mates for 3 years in high school. How are they like 2 stars that never meet? The others laughed. Oh, come on, it's all just vague fortune cookie stuff. You believe it if you want. Whether it's accurate or not is up to you. Come on, let's drink, someone called out, and they all cheerfully raised their glasses again. Sitting beside Leo, however, Claire felt a stir in her heart. She turned to look at him, her thoughts swirling, a gentle warmth filling her eyes. Heaven and earth lend their power, and the fated stars meet. It's very accurate. At that moment, as if sensing her gaze, Leo turned his head, his eyes meeting hers. He smiled faintly. Under the table, he reached out and gently took her hand, giving it a light squeeze. Though no words were spoken between them, it was as if their hearts understood each other completely. Claire smiled back, her fingers intertwining with his. If there is no fate, even a lifetime of devotion and the wishes of the world can barely forge a connection, and you remain strangers even in old age. But if there is fate, even if separated by time and space, by mountains and seas, you will eventually meet. And when you do, it will be as if you've known each other forever. Author's note: tomorrow will be 3 chapters or 1 big chapter. Something interesting is coming. Remember to urge for updates. And remember the little gifts. If there are big gifts, that's fine too, After a night of drinking and revelry, everyone stayed over at the single slaughterhouse. Claire had had quite a bit to drink and was feeling a little tipsy. She went into the bedroom to wash up, and Leo naturally followed, ready to turn in for the night. Or, more accurately, not quite ready. Downstairs, while they were having hot pot, Leo had casually mentioned the special gift left by their landlord, Mr. Qian. The moment he did, the eyes of his roommates, the boss, the second in command, and the fourth, lit up like light bulbs. Holy crap. Mind blown. Such a high-tech piece of furniture actually existed? They passionately recommended that a motel install one in every suite. Marco even gripped Leo's hand tightly, as if entrusting him with a revolutionary mission. Leo, for the sake of all of room 520, you have to find that remote. When you're done testing it, you'll have opened our eyes for us. Dylan nodded vigorously beside him. Leon earnestly pulled out 2 date cakes and handed them to Leo for courage. Go for it. And so, the time had come. The sound of running water came from the bathroom. Confirming that his girlfriend was still busy, Leo seized the opportunity to search the bedroom. Remote, remote, remote. It wasn't for any personal reason, of course. It was purely out of a sense of duty to his roommates and a Berkeley student's natural curiosity. How could he, Leo Wallace, possibly be interested in something like a vibrating bed with mood settings? Damn it, where did Bertha hide the remote? Stop looking. The girl's voice, cool and light, came suddenly from behind him, catching him completely off guard. Leo jumped and spun around. His girlfriend was standing by the bathroom door, having emerged at some point without him noticing. She looked at him with amusement, a remote control held nonchalantly in her hand. She even gave it a little shake. Are you looking for this? Leo. He tried his best to appear calm. What are you talking about, Bertha? I was just stretching. She looked at him, her eyes narrowing slightly. Oh, like a cat cornering a mouse. She moved toward him with light, elegant steps, her aura both alluring and dangerous. Fess up. Who put you up to this? Leo held his ground, his voice firm. No one. It was just me. The deep bonds of brotherhood in room 520 would never be betrayed. She was now standing right in front of him, her red lips parting slightly, her breath like an orchid. You're really not going to tell me? I'm not telling, he declared. Her eyes curved into a slight smile, her voice becoming even softer, more seductive. If you tell me, there's a reward. Huh, you think a simple honey trap will work on me, you witch? A mere reward. How could that possibly shake my resolve? The mini-cartoon version of himself, in his mind, scoffed dismissively. The real Leo continued righteously. No matter what you say, I'll never tell you it was Marco, Leon, and Dylan. The next morning, after waking up and packing their bags, it was time for everyone to leave the LNS house. They all had tickets home. They gathered in the living room by the front door to say their goodbyes. They wouldn't see each other for the entire winter break, and the air was thick with reluctance and a touch of melancholy. Leo looked just as melancholic as the rest of them. That cunning Bertha. Last night he had dutifully confessed and sold out his roommates. Brimming with guilt, he had eagerly asked, so what's the reward? But the girl had simply turned and glided back into the bathroom, tossing a single, airy sentence over her shoulder. Idiot. I was just kidding. By the front door, the girls from room 205 had finished their farewells with Claire and left reluctantly. Now it was the boys from room 520's turn to stand before Leo and Claire. Marco looked at Claire with deep, moving affection. Bertha, we're going to miss you so much. Without us around, you have to take good care of yourself this winter break. The girl looked at the three of them, raised an eyebrow, and threw out a cool, nonchalant question. So, you three were the ones who put Leo up to stealing the remote last night. Marco's expression didn't change as he turned and walked away. Ah, my train is about to leave. Goodbye, Bertha. Goodbye, Leo. Seeing their chance, Leon and Dylan immediately turned and fled. In the blink of an eye, all three were gone. Of course they ran. Sticking around would have been a death sentence. Leo's train ticket was for the 26th, so he had 2 days left before heading home. He had originally thought he'd be taking the train back with his girlfriend. He had even started planning. Last time, on the overnight sleeper train, they'd run into that couple, Brandon and Michelle. That night, the sounds from the bunk above them had been an education. This time, he had his own girlfriend. It was only right that he learned from the example of his predecessors. He wasn't planning anything too wild, but a young couple squeezing into one narrow sleeper bunk seemed perfectly reasonable, right? Unfortunately, the thought had barely crossed his mind before reality came crashing down. Claire told him she couldn't go back with him this time. After all, she had been in the city for a whole semester without seeing her father once, which was hard to justify. Plus, the Sterling family had many relatives in the area that she needed to visit out of courtesy. Of course, her own, more concise version was, I'm just going to see what kind of excuse Charles Sterling can come up with this time for not coming home to see his daughter for 3 years. She turned to the retired Special Forces soldier, her tone casual. Right, Mr. Joe. Mr. Joe, who had come by in the afternoon to help with the new house, walked past carrying a potted plant, his eyes wide with shock. I didn't hear anything. You are just a soulless moving man. You know nothing. So, in the end, Leo would be returning home alone. Claire would probably stay in the city for a few more days before heading back. Leo was a little disappointed, but understood. That afternoon, the two of them, along with Mr. Joe, continued to arrange and decorate the LNS house. In the evening, Mr. Joe tactfully took his leave, once again thoughtfully giving the couple space for their studies. Exam week is over. No need to study? Nonsense. A decorated soldier says it's for studying, then it's for studying. After everyone had left, Leo and Claire were the only ones left in the house. He went to the kitchen to cook dinner. The girl, now in a familiar routine, followed him in with light steps and comfortably wrapped her arms around his waist from behind, pressing her slender, soft body against his like a koala, holding on tight. The moment the voice spoke on the other end, Leo remembered. Chloe Chu, Mia's mother, the beautiful, gentle-mannered young woman. He and Claire, back when they were just desk mates, had met the mother and daughter in the dining car of the train on their way to Berkeley. Later, they had unexpectedly encountered a fugitive, Gavin Zhang, who had taken little Mia hostage during his escape. In the end, thanks to Leo and Claire's teamwork, they had subdued Gavin and rescued Mia without incident. Afterward, at the police station, Chloe Chu had thanked them profusely, repeatedly insisting on treating them to dinner. At the time, Leo and Claire were in a hurry to get to campus and had politely declined. But they had exchanged contact information, and Chloe had insisted that she must have them over to her home someday to properly express her gratitude. Enough time had passed that both Leo and Claire had nearly forgotten about it. It wasn't until this call came that it all came flooding back. Hearing the familiar, gentle voice, he smiled. Mrs. Chu, long time no see. How's Mia? Chloe's voice on the other end was filled with a soft, happy laughter. She's doing great. She's been talking about the big brother and sister from the train ever since. I held back from calling because I didn't want to disturb your studies, she continued. But you should be on winter break now at Berkeley, right? Do you have time to come visit? If you don't, I think Mia might just talk my ear off. Her tone was sincere and earnest, filled with hope. Leo and Claire exchanged a look. On one hand, they didn't want to refuse her kindness again. On the other, they were on break with nothing to do for the next couple of days, and seeing the adorable little Mia again sounded nice. The couple reached a silent consensus. Leo spoke into the phone, smiling as he agreed. All right, is this afternoon convenient for you, Mrs. Chu? If it is, we'd be happy to stop by. Getting a confirmation from her two young saviors, Chloe was clearly delighted and immediately said that the afternoon was perfect. So, that afternoon, Leo and Claire set out, taking the subway into the city. Following the address Chloe had given them, they found her residential complex, Stillwater Estates. Walking into the complex, Leo looked around, impressed. He recognized the name. In his past life, over a decade later, the property value here would be astronomical. Even now, it was one of the most upscale residential areas in the city. When he had first met Chloe, he had guessed from her elegant demeanor and tasteful attire that her family was well off. Now it seemed, well off was an understatement. She was clearly quite wealthy. Of course, he thought, glancing at his girlfriend beside him with a wry smile, the really wealthy one is standing right next to me. At the same moment, Claire was admiring the landscaping of the complex, nodding slightly in appreciation. This is a nice community. I should consider buying a unit as our second marital home. They arrived at the entrance to Chloe's building and buzzed the intercom. Chloe's gentle voice came through the speaker. After Leo and Claire announced themselves, she buzzed them in, her voice filled with excitement. They took the elevator up. As they reached her front door, before they could even knock, it swung open from the inside. A tiny figure stood in the entryway. A little girl, as cute as a porcelain doll. It was Mia. The little girl stood with an air of great importance, like the mistress of the house. With her hands on her hips, she looked up at her two guests and announced, "Welcome." The next second, all her bravado vanished. Seeing Claire, she let out a cry of joy and threw herself forward, wrapping her arms around Claire's waist. "Big sister, Mia missed you so much." Claire, charmed by the little girl's antics, laughed and gently stroked her head. "I miss you too." After their affectionate reunion, Mia reluctantly let go of Claire and turned to face Leo, her little hands once again on her hips, her commanding presence restored. "Hello, cowardly big brother." Leo, unfazed, nodded in greeting. "Hello, bratty little sister." Their eyes met, and invisible sparks seemed to fly between them. Then, a hand smacked him on the back of the head. It was his girlfriend, chiding him with a mix of exasperation and amusement. "You're an adult. Don't pick on a child." Hearing the commotion in the entryway, Chloe emerged from another room. Seeing Leo and Claire at the door, her eyes lit up with a happy smile. "You're here. Come in, please sit down." Seeing Chloe again after half a year, she was still as beautiful as ever, with a quiet, graceful temperament. She was dressed in comfortable clothes, her long hair tied back in a ponytail that draped over her shoulder, making her look even more gentle. Leo found himself admiring her, but another thought couldn't help but pop into his head. That hairstyle is very dangerous. They sat down in the living room. sipping the tea Chloe had poured. Leo looked around at the decor. As expected of one of the city's top residential complexes, the apartment was at least 2,000 square feet. The furnishings were simple yet elegant, exuding a refined comfort. However, there was no sign of a man living there. Chloe, perceptive as ever, noticed his gaze and guessed what he was thinking. She smiled faintly and explained, "Mia's father passed away a while ago. It's just me and Mia at home." Leo and Claire were taken aback. As Chloe continued to share her story, their surprise turned into deep respect. It turned out that Mrs. Chu was no ordinary woman. Though her husband had passed away tragically young, she had not only shouldered the responsibility of raising their daughter alone, but had also continued to manage the business they had started together, a chain of mother and baby stores. She was the owner of a well-known local brand. She had managed both her career and her family, carrying the weight of it all on her own. Claire looked at Chloe with a newfound sense of admiration. "Mrs. Chu, that's truly incredible." Chloe just smiled and shook her head. "Not at all. I was just doing what I had to do to get by, gritting my teeth and pushing through." A simple sentence, glossing over years of unimaginable hardship and sweat. As the three of them chatted, Mia sat beside them, her big eyes blinking as she looked back and forth between Leo and Claire. Suddenly, she looked at Leo and blurted out, "Big brother, are you and big sister husband and wife now?" The question made all three adults burst out laughing. This time, however, Leo puffed out his chest proudly, his voice full of confidence. The Concord, Unit 1, 16th floor. A luxury apartment. A heartwarming reunion between father and daughter after a long separation. A concerned father showering his child with questions. To any outsider, it should have been a touching scene. Until the sudden, unexpected twist, "I have a boyfriend." 4 simple words, dropped out of nowhere. They landed in the spacious living room like a clap of thunder. The air went still, deathly still. The ingratiating smile on the chairman's face froze. Then, his entire body slowly petrified into a statue. The retired Special Forces soldier, who had just stepped into the room, also froze in his tracks. His mind felt like it had been hit by 50,000 tons of TNT. He was completely, utterly dumbfounded, a stampede of 1,000 alpacas rampaging through his brain. "Wait, who even asked you?" At that moment, the girl seemed to come to her senses. She glanced at her father beside her, a flicker of surprise in her eyes. You didn't ask." Then, before her petrified father could react, she shook her head casually. "It doesn't matter if you didn't. I'm just letting you know. I have a boyfriend now. You were going to find out sooner or later." Her tone was light, matter-of-fact, and completely unapologetic. After she spoke, her gaze drifted past her stone-faced old man to the retired soldier standing by the door, and she gave him a slight nod of acknowledgement, as if thanking him for his earlier advice. The decorated Special Forces soldier, a man who had faced countless dangers and could remain stoic in the face of a collapsing mountain, felt his eyes tremble like they were powered by an electric motor. "Wait, miss, why are you looking at me? And what's with that look of acknowledgement and thanks?" He had only given his young mistress a gentle reminder to be psychologically prepared. He wasn't suggesting she go nuclear and drop the bomb on the first day. This was not what he meant at all. Having dropped her bomb, Claire calmly walked over to the sofa, sat down, poured herself a cup of tea, and began to sip it gracefully. She completely ignored the 2 petrified middle-aged men in the room. The mighty chairman of Sterling Holdings had been hit so hard by his daughter's words that his brain had nearly short-circuited. It took a monumental effort for his mind to slowly, stiffly begin to turn again. Charles Sterling forced a rigid smile and slowly sat down next to his precious daughter. Drawing on decades of experience in the business world, he managed to come up with a plausible explanation. "By boyfriend, you mean a male classmate you get along well with, right? Ha ha ha, you kids these days, you pick up all sorts of new slang in college. Is that what they all say at Berkeley? Ha ha." His forced, hearty laughter echoed through the room, seemingly easing the frozen atmosphere. The retired soldier by the entrance relaxed slightly and was about to step forward with a smile to smooth things over. The next second, the girl, still sipping her tea, glanced up at her old man. "It means we're a couple, the dating kind." The middle-aged man's forced laughter died in his throat. By the doorway, the retired soldier, who had just summoned the courage to step forward, froze once more. He didn't dare move. The atmosphere turned icy again. The chairman felt his brain seizing up, on the verge of another crash. "Calm down. Deep breaths. Deep breaths." Charles Sterling forced another stiff smile. He tried to sound composed, but his voice was dry. "Oh, dating. The kind where a boy and a girl hold hands." Before he could finish, his daughter glanced at him again and corrected him coolly, the kind where a boy and a girl kiss. The atmosphere died for a third time. The temperature in the room plummeted below freezing, killing any last vestiges of hope and illusion. Mr. Joe, his eyes darting around wildly, began to back out of the door. I didn't park the car properly. I'll go park it again. It was too dangerous. He would go downstairs and repark the car to avoid the fallout. He could take his time, maybe 3 or 5 years, or even a lifetime. Maybe he should just drive the Maybach all the way back to Northwood. He could not, under any circumstances, stay in this room. Completely oblivious to his right-hand man's panicked escape, the chairman was still trying desperately to remain calm, to process the shocking news. Right, boyfriend, dating, couple, cake kissing. His voice, which he had tried so hard to keep steady, finally cracked. Charles Sterling looked up stiffly at his precious daughter, his voice trembling. You're really dating? In the living room, on the sofa. The atmosphere had returned to a semblance of calm. Claire was still serenely sipping her tea. Charles Sterling, sitting beside her, was also holding a teacup, but the tea inside had long gone cold, forgotten. The chairman's mind was a whirlwind of emotions, shock, disbelief, and rage, all mixed with a profound sense of confusion. He looked at his precious daughter, gathered his composure, and cautiously began his interrogation. How long have you been dating? Claire replied nonchalantly, not important. Charles swallowed hard and pressed on. What's his name? Where's he from? Claire answered casually, not important. Charles's eye twitched. Why don't you bring him to meet your father sometime? Claire continued to pour her tea. No need. The chairman finally lost his patience, setting his teacup down with a clatter, his face a mask of grief and indignation. You're in a relationship. Shouldn't I, as your father, at least know the basic details? Don't I get to vet him? At last, the girl's hand paused. She turned and gave her father a cool, level look. I'm 18. I'm an adult. Is it unreasonable for me to be in a relationship? It was Charles's turn to be stunned. The girl set down her teacup and continued to look at her father, her voice calm. A certain chairman was so busy with work that his daughter had to constantly change schools and move homes. She never had a chance to make friends, especially male friends. Now that she's finally found someone suitable, is it unreasonable for her to want to hold on to him? Sweat started to bead on Charles's forehead. Well, that. The girl's eyes narrowed, a dangerous glint in them, but her voice remained casual. And my father, who was missing for 3 years, was so devoted to his work that he never spent a single day with his daughter. The daughter was lonely and had no one to rely on, so she found a boyfriend to keep her company. Is that unreasonable? Charles Sterling was now sweating profusely. He wiped his brow and nodded like a bobblehead. In his decades in the business world, Charles Sterling had faced countless formidable opponents, including famous tycoons and powerful underworld figures. But this time, facing a brand new adversary, the pressure and sense of crisis he felt were no less than any he had ever experienced before. He looked up at his trusted right-hand man. Joe, you used to be in reconnaissance, right? The retired Special Forces soldier was still a bit dazed and nodded subconsciously. Yes, sir. Charles's expression grew even more solemn. To be able to pull the wool over the eyes of a recon soldier of your caliber and successfully get close to my precious daughter. This punk, he's really got something. Mr. Joe. He was slowly starting to realize what was happening. Before he even had a chance to confess, it seemed his boss had preemptively cleared his name. Is this for real? But the professional ethics and conscience of a Special Forces soldier made him hesitate. Just as he was about to speak the truth, he began hesitantly. Mr. Sterling, Seeing his subordinate's hesitation, Charles guessed what he was thinking and waved a hand. I know what you're going to say. This isn't your fault. On one hand, that punk must have some tricks up his sleeve. But on the other, it was probably Claire who helped him cover it up. Seeing the increasingly strange expression on his subordinate's face, the chairman assumed it was due to guilt and self-blame. He pulled out the notebook and spread it on the table. It's really not your fault. Look here, the records I asked you to keep. You've done a very detailed job. From morning to night, you've recorded everything you were supposed to. If I were to blame you for this, wouldn't that make me a pretty clueless boss? Mr. Joe fell silent for a long moment, then nodded gravely. You're right. Having reassured his subordinate, Charles Sterling's own mood improved slightly. He looked at the reconnaissance notebook on the table and smiled with a hint of relief. I was just a bit emotional earlier, a father's knee-jerk reaction. Actually, looking at the intelligence from your notes, my precious daughter and this so-called boyfriend of hers probably don't even have much time to spend together. According to your timeline, he continued, that girl is with her good classmates all day long. When would she have time to mess around with that punk? Mr. Joe, using the act of sipping his tea as a cover, felt his eyes twitch violently. He responded calmly, you're right. Getting his right-hand man's validation, the chairman's mood brightened even more. See, besides, my daughter has barely interacted with boys her whole life. What does she know about love? And that stuff about kissing, she probably just said it to annoy her old man. If you ask me, the furthest that girl has gone with that punk is holding hands, huh? A hearty, confident laugh echoed through the room. Mr. Joe cautiously looked up at his boss, his heart filled with complicated emotions. Love. The young mistress knows plenty. His conscience pricked at him. The retired soldier felt he should just tell the truth. Mr. Sterling, actually, before he could finish, his boss, who was casually flipping through the notebook, noticed a line. Hey, he asked curiously, what does this mean? Daily intimacy sessions, 3/3? The Special Forces soldier felt the world crumble around him. His scalp tingled, on the verge of exploding. His voice trembled uncontrollably. It means. Before he could rack his brain for an excuse, the intelligent and wise chairman had a flash of insight. It must be yoga, right? He said admiringly. She's quite diligent about her exercise 3 times a day. Mr. Joe let out a long, silent sigh of relief. Yes, it's yoga. Charles flipped to the next page, then looked up in confusion. Why does this day's session say 17/3? Did she overdo her workout? Joe, did you make a mistake here? In a flash, the notebook was snatched back by the terrified retired soldier. Yes, I made a mistake. Forget conscience, forget telling the truth. Saving his own skin was what mattered most. His trusted subordinate was loyal and meticulous in his duties. This finally brought a sense of comfort to the chairman, and his mood improved considerably. But the thought of the punk who had stolen his daughter's heart still made him grind his teeth. This won't do. That kid needs to be taught a lesson. I'll talk to my little brother later, figure out how to take care of him. Hearing this, Mr. Joe felt a chill run down his spine. He couldn't help but cautiously try to intervene. Mr. Sterling, please don't be angry. Miss Sterling has good judgment. Maybe the boyfriend she chose isn't so bad. Besides, she's grown up now, and you're always so busy. You can't expect her to be alone forever, right? Hearing this, Charles Sterling paused, then sighed wistfully. You're right. What Claire said earlier. It really hit me where it hurts. Her mother passed away early, and I haven't been the father I should have been. All these years, she's been on her own, growing into the outstanding young woman she is today. Who knows how much she's suffered in private? If she's truly happy with him, then of course I won't object. His tone had softened considerably. Mr. Joe, sitting across from him, breathed a sigh of relief. He was about to speak again, but Charles, as if remembering something, frowned, and his tone shifted. I might be fine with it, but her mother's family won't be so easy to convince. They know Claire turns 18 this year. The Chu family is starting to get restless, looking to make a profitable deal with no investment. Speaking of his late wife's family, a cold glint flashed in Charles's eyes. Then he remembered something else. Oh, right. It seems that kid from the Wei family is back in the country. Mr. Joe was taken aback. Wei, having served as boss for many years, a memory clicked into place, and his eyes widened in realization. You mean? Charles nodded. Yes, that kid. The Wei family brought him back this time, most likely for Claire. He paused, then looked at his subordinate and instructed him. Leo was utterly confused. After parting ways with his girlfriend at the train station entrance, he had gone inside, picked up his ticket, and found a fast food joint. He ordered a bowl of noodles and was happily slurping them down, already missing his girlfriend, when this guy showed up. The stranger, who seemed to think they were old friends, rolled his suitcase over and plopped down in the seat opposite him. He immediately launched into a long, rambling monologue. Bro, you have no idea. This terrifying woman and I, we were childhood friends, but I basically grew up living in her shadow of terror. Even as a kid, she was ridiculously beautiful, but her personality was ice cold. No other kid dared to get close to her, except for me, the unlucky one. When we got a little older, she started training with her family's bodyguards, and I became her personal punching bag. I got beat up every single day. At this point, the young man, whose name was Wyatt Way, was overcome with grief. I even found a master to train with, but I still couldn't beat a little girl. Can you imagine what it's like for a guy to get beaten up by his childhood friend from the age of 5, all the way to 10? Sitting across from him, Leo was focused on devouring his noodles. What was it like? He didn't know. He didn't care. In the eyes of a true foodie, only food mattered. His silent audience didn't deter the young man in the slightest. He continued his lament. Then, when we were even older, our family started talking about an arranged marriage, about me marrying her when we grew up. I mean, seriously? What century are we living in? Of course I wasn't having it. The day I heard about it, I ran over to her, scared out of my mind, and laid my cards on the table. I swore to the heavens that even if every other woman in the world died and she was the last one left, I would never marry her. But she didn't believe me. She just looked at me with that cold, calm expression and said something about how physically eliminating me was the only way to be sure. After that, she started beating me up every time she saw me. And, I mean, she beat me even harder. I couldn't take it anymore. Any more beatings, and I would have been dead. So, in middle school, I fled the country to study abroad. A big part of the reason was to get away from her. The story finally came to an end. Leo had also finished his noodles. He let out a satisfied burp and offered a single comment. That sounded pretty rough. He paused, looking at the overly familiar guy in front of him. But why are you telling me all this? Wyatt Way grinned. No reason. I just saw you, bro, and felt a strange connection. Suddenly felt the need to vent. He paused, then looked at the empty noodle bowl in front of Leo and added sheepishly, also, I just got back to the country, and my wallet was stolen at the station. I'm a little hungry now. Wyatt stared wistfully at the bowl. Bro, are you done with your noodles? Are you going to drink the broth? If not, I can help you with that. Don't want it to go to waste. Leo. A few moments later, at the same table, the young man, named Wyatt Way, was hunched over a new bowl of noodles, inhaling them. Good brother, he mumbled, his mouth full. From now on, you are my long-lost father, my brother from another mother. I want to say thank you for this great kindness. I will definitely repay you. He went back to slurping down his noodles. He looked like a starving man, clearly famished. He ate so fast that he started choking, clutching his neck and his eyes rolling back in his head. Leo watched, his face dark. Forget it. Just eat slowly and don't die in front of me. In this new life, he hadn't done much in the way of making money or showing off, but he had certainly racked up some good karma. Last time it was buying cigarettes for that big brother at the convenience store. This time, it was buying a meal for this guy at the train station. At this rate, he felt like he should replace the Buddha statue at the chapel on Serenity Peak. Reborn as a bodhisattva? Nah, the title sounded like a flop. Besides, he had a girlfriend. Only single guys who couldn't find a girlfriend would want to become monks. The meal was finished. The entire bowl of noodles, broth and all, had disappeared. Wyatt Way patted his full stomach contentedly. It's good to be alive. Leo sized up the guy. He was well-dressed and had a certain charm. Based on the story he had just told, he was probably the young master of some wealthy family. So, you came back this time for an arranged meeting with your childhood friend? Everyone loves a bit of gossip. After listening for so long, Leo was a little curious. Hearing his question, Wyatt put down his chopsticks with a heavy expression and nodded. Yeah, my grandfather is in poor health. I came back to be with him, to take care of him, but my parents and the rest of my family are obsessed with setting me up. He sighed. To be honest, I have absolutely no romantic interest in my childhood friend. Besides, there are other reasons. I've never really thought about marrying a woman. Hearing this, the person sitting opposite him froze. Leo silently scooted his chair back. Wyatt Way, that's not what I meant. Leo tried to be reassuring. It's okay. I don't understand, but I respect it. As he spoke, he scooted his chair back a little further. Wyatt's mouth twitched. He changed the subject. Anyway, I have no interest in that woman. But my family doesn't care what I think. They're dead set on making her my wife. Leo thought for a moment and offered some friendly advice. From what you said, she's very beautiful, and you grew up together. Why don't you give it a try? Wyatt shook his head so hard it looked like it might fall off. No way. Trying would mean dying. Damn, she beat me to a pulp when we were kids. If I see her again on this trip, I'm a dead man. A smug look then appeared on his face. So, I made a plan before I came back. I'm transferring to a university here. With her grades, she definitely got into Harvard or Yale, so she's in the Northeast. So I did the opposite. I'm transferring to Berkeley. She's up north, I'm out west. There's no way we'll run into each other. It's foolproof. Bro, am I a genius or what? Ha ha. Leo had no comment on this mooching brother's story or his decision. He respected the man's destiny. It had nothing to do with him. Anyway, it was just an entertaining story. But the childhood friend he described sounded terrifying. Nothing like his own girlfriend, who was gentle and lovely. Completely different. Comparing the two, Leo felt a surge of satisfaction, and his longing for his dear Bertha intensified. As they were parting ways in a fast food joint, Wyatt enthusiastically insisted they exchange contact information. When he heard that Leo also studied in the city, he was even more delighted, saying they should hang out sometime. After all, he had just returned to the country and didn't have any friends here. Leo looked at the overly friendly guy. He thought about what he'd said about not marrying a woman and his other reasons. His eyes filled with suspicion again. His girlfriend was right. A boy out on his own really did need to protect himself. Noticing Leo's wary gaze, Wyatt protested angrily. I really don't have that kind of preference. I'm not bragging, bro, but when I was abroad, I had tons of girls chasing me. Leo looked at his passionate display and nodded sympathetically. I get it, but I really do have a girlfriend. We're just not right for each other. Wyatt. He was nearly choked by Leo's words. But after recovering, he generously insisted that he would repay the kindness of the meal. He told Leo to contact him after winter break, and he would treat him to dinner. Leo could even bring his girlfriend along. Don't worry, bro. I may be charming, but I promise I won't be interested in your girl. You have nothing to worry about. Wyatt puffed out his chest, looking proud. Leo looked at him. Don't worry. My girlfriend wouldn't be interested in you. Wyatt laughed confidently. You never know. My charm. Most girls can't resist it. If you're so confident, bro, then bring her along next time we meet. After saying goodbye to the moocher, it was time. Leo took his ticket to the gate and, before long, boarded the train and found his compartment. Just like 6 months ago, he had booked a sleeper car for the return trip. The compartment still had 4 bunks. But this time, there were no young couples and no beautiful desk mate. Oh, right, no beautiful girlfriend by his side. Sitting on the top bunk, Leo stared into space for a while. He missed his girlfriend. He took out his phone, thinking about sending her a text to see what she was up to. Before he could type anything, his phone rang. The caller ID showed it was his dear Bertha. Leo was pleasantly surprised and quickly answered. Hello. The girl's familiar, pleasant voice came through the phone. Miss me? As direct and to the point as ever, just like her. Leo laughed. Yeah, I was just thinking about you. They chatted for a while. Leo told her he had just gotten on the train and mentioned the guy he'd met whose wallet had been stolen. Then he changed the subject, curious about how things were going on her end. How are things with you? Did you see your dad? She replied. I saw him. Leo asked cautiously. Does he know about us? On the other end of the line, a small smile played on Claire's lips. He knows. Leo's hand trembled, and he nearly dropped his phone. He steadied himself, trying to keep his voice calm. What? What was his reaction? The girl's voice was light and casual. Nothing much. He was pretty happy, accepted it easily. Leo was stunned. For real? Claire replied without batting an eye. Of course. My dad's very open-minded. Leo let out a sigh of relief. That's good, that's good. He had been worried that his future father-in-law would be the difficult type. But from what his girlfriend was saying, he seemed like a pretty decent guy. The warnings from that big brother now seemed completely unnecessary. Feeling much more relaxed, Leo thought for a moment and then asked, well, then, should I come with you to meet him sometime? The girl on the other end paused, then shook her head. Not right now. His heart hasn't been feeling well recently. Leo understood. Okay, then we'll do it later. They chatted for a few more minutes. Leo's phone suddenly beeped with another incoming call. It was no cigarette money, big brother. A call at this time must be important. He told his girlfriend, hold on a sec. I need to take this. He ended the call and answered the new one. Hello, big brother, what's up? The middle-aged man's voice on the other end was heavy with grief and indignation. Little brother, you were right. You're big brother. Some damn punk has stolen my treasure. Leo was stunned for a moment. He then learned from the man that his precious daughter had a boyfriend. He immediately understood the man's feelings and offered a few words of comfort. After venting for a while, the chairman felt a little better, but the situation is still manageable. From what I can gather, that damn punk and my precious daughter are probably only at the hand-holding stage. But as he spoke, his anger flared up again, and he gritted his teeth. Hand-holding isn't okay either. Just wait until I get my hands on that kid. I'll break his arm. On the other end of the line, Leo, who loved a good bit of drama, nodded in enthusiastic agreement. Whichever hand he held hers with, break it. If he held her with both hands, break them both. Receiving comfort and support from his little brother, Charles Sterling felt much better. He remembered to ask about him. By the way, how are things on your end? Leo replied cheerfully, not bad. My future father-in-law seems to know about me. But the old guy is pretty open-minded. Shouldn't be a problem. If he was anything like you, big brother, he'd probably want to kill me, haha. A familiar overnight train. A familiar sleeper car. The only difference was that the other 3 bunks were now occupied by a few elderly people. They were friendly and warm, greeting Leo with smiles and offering him snacks. Two of them seemed to be a couple. The other old man was a third wheel. The elderly couple were sickeningly sweet, passing tea and feeding each other snacks. Leo and the single old man watched, their faces dark. The single old man looked at the young man beside him, finding some comfort in not being alone. "Young man, you single too?" Leo looked at him. "Sir, I have a girlfriend." The old man, filled with indignation, he turned and went back to his bunk. This whole world is just one big romance. Is there no place for a single person to live? However, later that night, Leo was subjected to the single old man's revenge. The lights in the compartment were turned off. The sweet elderly couple were fast asleep. But the single old man in the bunk next to Leo was snoring like a thunderstorm. The snores were so violent that they shook his own bunk. Leo tossed and turned, unable to sleep. He pulled the covers over his head and took out his phone to text his girlfriend. "You asleep?" A few moments later, his phone rang. It was her. Leo quickly answered, holding the phone to his ear and whispering, "Hello." The girl's pleasant voice came through the phone, tinged with a smile. "What's wrong, silly? Can't sleep because you miss me?" Leo sighed under the covers. "Someone won't let me sleep." He held his phone out from under the blanket, so she could hear the loud snores from the neighboring bunk. Claire burst out laughing. It took her a while to compose herself. "It's not that bad," she said, trying to hold back her laughter. "Just think of it as white noise. At least, it's better than that night on the train to Berkeley." That night, Michelle and Brandon were performing a duet. Her words brought back memories of that night in the sleeper car. Indeed, that night, the duet from the bunk next to them had been a form of both physical and psychological torture. On one hand, the singing was soul-stirringly seductive. On the other, it filled one's mind with all sorts of tantalizing thoughts. Just then, Claire asked, "What are you thinking about?" Leo's mind was racing, and he blurted out, "I'm thinking about when I'll get to hear you sing one like that." The moment the words left his mouth, he realized his mistake, but it was too late to take them back. There was a moment of silence on the other end. Then, the great Miss Sterling's voice came through, cool and clear. Leo, he could feel the killing intent even through the phone. He quickly tried to backtrack. No, I was just kidding." Before he could finish, the girl's voice came again. But this time, it was as if she was biting her lower lip, her voice a mix of shyness and allure, as she whispered, You really want to hear it?" Leo's mind went blank. What did she just say? It turns out, the telephone is a truly remarkable invention. Half a minute later, the girl's normal voice returned, trying to sound calm and composed, but unable to hide her unease. That's it. You should go to sleep now." On his end of the line, in his bunk, Leo was also trying to act normal, but his throat was uncharacteristically dry. "Yeah, good night." He hung up the phone. He threw off the covers and stared blankly at the ceiling of the train car. His mind was filled with the memory of the girl's shy but determined attempt. Even though it was just the clumsy imitation of an inexperienced beginner, the soft voice that had come through the phone had been breathtaking. It had nearly pulverized his already shattered resolve into atoms. The mini-cartoon version of himself in his mind had a complete meltdown. His forehead turned red like a steaming kettle, and then, with a bang, he overloaded, blood spurting from his nose as he fell backward. Wiping the blood, he sighed with infinite admiration. "Damn, as expected of the real me. You even managed to pull that off. Incredible." At the same moment, in the city, in the luxury apartment at the Concord, in her bedroom, Claire had also hastily hung up the phone. She sat on her bed, her face flushed, her heart pounding. She felt as if she had done something terribly wrong, something that couldn't be spoken of. The mini-cartoon version of herself in her mind was so ashamed she wanted to dig a hole and bury herself. "Ah, Claire, what were you just doing? You were going to die of embarrassment. Are you shameless?" After a frantic bout of self-criticism, she took a deep breath and finally managed to calm down. She looked at the stuffed black doll in her arms, Leo Hammer Wallace, wrinkled her nose, and whispered, "You little pervert. You got lucky." For anyone else, she would never have even considered trying something like that. But for that silly boy, she could make an exception. At the same time, in the study, Charles Sterling, busy with work, looked up to see his right-hand man walk in with a bowl of hot porridge. He was a little confused. "Why didn't you take this to Claire? Is she asleep?" The retired soldier, standing before the desk, replied respectfully, "Not yet, but it seemed like Miss Sterling was busy. I didn't want to disturb her." Charles frowned slightly. "Busy? With what?" The retired soldier thought for a moment. He had taken the porridge to his young mistress's bedroom door. Before he could knock, he had heard a faint sound from behind the thick, soundproof wooden door. It was too faint to make out clearly, but after careful consideration, he respectfully answered his boss. I believe. She was practicing her singing. The chairman's face relaxed into an amused smile. That girl. What's got into her, singing so late at night? He shook his head, a nostalgic look on his face. She had a beautiful singing voice when she was a child. But since she grew up, I haven't had the chance to hear it. Hearing his boss, Mr. Joan nodded in agreement, a slight smile on his face. Indeed, it's been a long time since I've heard Miss Sterling sing. At that moment, the retired soldier even felt a little regretful. If he'd gotten a little closer, he might have had the honor of hearing his young mistress's singing voice once more. As the soldier's real self was feeling this regret, he had no idea that he had just walked along the edge of a cliff. His diligent, loyal eyes had nearly landed him in another life-or-death situation. Author's note. Remember to click Urge Update. 3 chapters today. Righteously demanding small and large gifts.